Could you just stand up for us? Thank you. Welcome. Glad you're here tonight.
Is that better? I'm current vice chair. So the inception of the Women's Commission. So the Women's Commission was established in May of 2019 with the governing body adopting resolution number 2019-24. The resolution was introduced by the mayor along with six council members. The intent was to create a women's commission that would identify opportunities to improve City of Santa Fe programs and policies and to strengthen the quality of life of women and girls in Santa Fe so they can thrive personally and professionally. The notice for commissioners was posted in early 2020, with selections being made later in the year. Although commissioners were being selected, the start date was pushed back due to the pandemic. The first official meeting occurred in May of 2021. The commission worked to create a vision statement and a mission statement as a basis of who we are and to whose voices we amplify. We also worked to create a strategic action plan listing the main objections and key priorities of the commission, as well as short-term and long-term goals, as outlined by the resolution. These statements, along with the strategic action plan, can be found on the Women's Commission page on santafemexico.gov, and our strategic plan can be found in both Spanish and English. Please note that the definition of women or women and girls as defined by Resolution 2019-24 is as follows. Women or women and girls shall consistently include and refer to women and girls, transgender women, self-identifying women and girls, and gender non-conforming individuals. As Elise mentioned, our current commissioners are Elise, myself, Olivia Sloan, who unfortunately could not be here, nor could Ana Yensi Olivas, and Melinda Garcia, who is in the audience. Our main objectives. The Women's Commission looks to address barriers and gender inequities within the city as well as the community. Recommendations are evidence-based and data-informed. We are looking at and researching existing and proposed ordinances, the structure of the city in relation to HR policies and practices of city departments. We are looking at public statements and messaging and ways the city can use the evidence-based and data-driven recommendations and insight from the commission. Most importantly, we want to ensure that diverse voices of women in the community at large are being represented and heard. The Women's Commission knows it can have an impact to help make Santa Fe a more diverse, family-friendly, and realistic location to choose. With the current state of the city and its policies, we see the lack of resources available to women. There are many factors that hinder personal and professional success. These include limited access to parental leave, limited access to high-quality childcare, including nurseries that accept infants, lack of equitable pay, lack of opportunities, and hostile work environments. These factors directly relate to the key priorities that are focus areas of our work.
So as Gabriella stated, the Santa Fe Women's Commission is a city commission. So we decided to begin with city employees as a target for our efforts, then expand outwards. As we are intending to advance gender equity within the city of Santa Fe, we need to ask ourselves, how do we make the city of Santa Fe a preferred employer for the women of our community? We can do this by asking three simple, seemingly simple, but not so simple questions. Do I feel safe? Do I feel supported? And do I have a future in this position? To find out, the Santa Fe Women's Commission enlisted in bold research for help.
So Just a little more background. Throughout the commission's time, we have experienced a couple hiatuses due to staff member needs, as well as not being able to fill all the commissioner positions. During 2022, we worked on finding a vendor who would aid our work in creating a city employee survey. During this time, a subcommittee created the outline of what we were looking for based on discussions and meetings of the commission as a whole. We worked with a company called Embold Research who helped develop our survey and ensure there was a women-specific lens for our questions. Embold Research is a subsidiary of Chains Research, who are focused on nonpartisan public opinion research for public, private, and nonprofit entities working to improve the communities they serve. Embold was suggested to us by a former commissioner who had colleagues who had worked with the newly created subunit of Change Research. We received other proposals as well. However, Embold not only fit our budget, but showed a better understanding of our wants. In the late spring of 2023, the Women's Commission sent out a city employee-wide survey via email requesting feedback and insight from them. We thank the mayor for helping emphasize the importance of employees sharing their voices. We provided incentives for respondents and acknowledged the importance of anonymity. Due to our adherence of anonymity and continued trust from respondents, we are limited in the specificity we can share. We are so grateful to the 314 employees who took the time to share their experiences and provide feedback for us to begin our recommendation work. One of the Embold Research employees called Jessica Mason gathered these responses and provided the survey results report, and she also presented the findings in our July 2023 meeting.
Hey, so now we have some stats. I'm not going to go into all of them. There was a lot of data that came back, but this is an overview of what came back. So in May 2023, Embold Research completed the survey. And while the survey results reveal an overall satisfaction with working for the city, they also highlight some critical areas where gender disparities exist. Firstly, although a substantial majority, 77% of employees report being satisfied with their work, this satisfaction varies by gender. Women in particular are less likely than men to rate the city positively regarding gender diversity, workplace culture, respect, work-life balance, and opportunities for advancement. The survey indicates that while employees generally feel physically safe at work, women report lower levels of emotional safety and a sense of belonging compared to their male counterparts. Notably, 46% of women have experienced some form of workplace mistreatment, including harassment and bullying, which is significantly higher than 23% reported by men. Furthermore, the survey reveals that pay and advancement opportunities are areas of concern for all employees, but women are particularly critical of these aspects. Women are also more likely to feel that their contributions are undervalued, and many employees specifically wrote in frustrations with pay and gender disparities in promotion practices. So our recommendations. Based on these findings, the Santa Fe Women's Commission has developed 3 strategic recommendations to address these issues and promote gender equity. So the first is to implement a comprehensive harassment training and reporting program across all departments. This program will provide all employees with essential training on recognizing, preventing, and reporting harassment. It aims to create a safer and more respectful work environment by establishing clear protocols and support systems for those who experience or witness harassment. The second is to establish a mentorship program. A mentorship program will pair less experienced employees with seasoned professionals to enhance skills development and improve workplace satisfaction. By fostering professional growth and networking, this program will help to address disparities in advancement opportunities that were noted. And the last is to develop a parental leave policy. Introducing a robust parental leave policy will support the health and well-being of employees, particularly those with caregiving responsibilities. This policy will aim to improve employment longevity and job satisfaction by recognizing and accommodating the needs of working parents. So these recommendations are works in progress. We are working on them. Stay tuned. And we are developing them along with action plans that we will be presenting to the governing body. Our next steps. So we are committed to ensuring these recommendations are tailored to the needs of the city of Santa Fe and its employees. Our next steps are to conduct a further deep dive into the Embold survey data. There wasn't just statistical data that was included. There was also a lot of narrative data that is taking time for us to go through. So we are thoroughly analyzing this to refine and fully inform our recommendations. This will help us ensure that our proposals address the specific issues identified and are grounded in the experiences of city employees. We are going to be collaborating with city departments to adjust and finalize our recommendations. This collaboration will ensure that the proposed initiatives are practical, effective, and aligned with the city's goals and resources. And then we will be presenting our final recommendations. Our goal is to present the final recommendations to the city by early 2025. This timeline will allow us to incorporate feedback and make necessary adjustments to ensure the recommendations are actionable and impactful. So in closing, the Santa Fe Women's Commission believes that these recommendations will significantly contribute to creating a more equitable and inclusive work environment. By addressing the disparities revealed in the survey, we can enhance employee satisfaction, improve workplace safety, and foster a culture where all employees feel valued and supported. Thank you very much for your attention today and your commitment to advancing gender equity in our city. We look forward to working with you and welcome any questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. And thanks for such a terrific report. I don't know if you can go back to that early slide where you talked about the overall goals and objectives that you were seeking to achieve, or maybe it was in a comment you made in your initial remarks about what the city of Santa Fe aspires to be with regard to the best employer, the employer of choice, the employer where everyone is treated with respect and an opportunity to grow their career, their skills, and do it with dignity and with safety and security. I think that's close to a paraphrase of what you were saying, and I absolutely endorse it 100%. And I think the way we get there is by following the roadmap that you've laid out for us. So grateful to you and the whole commission, as well as the folks who did the study, produced the results, and brought it forward to us in this form. I'm going to turn it over to the council or the governing body for comments and questions. I know we have two presentations tonight. Let's try to adhere to our 10-minute rule for everybody so that everybody gets a chance to talk if you want 10 minutes, and we'll just go in succession. So Councilor Castro, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thank you so very much. And thank you to the presenters. I do have a couple questions about health and safety and sort of long-term plans. And I'm looking through the 2020 plan. And so I still have some work to do. I know that we'll set up some time on the side. Will you tell me just some basics around the health and safety in particular? And also, I was wondering, when you're talking about the long-term data, can you give us a little bit more information about what that data looks like? What data points in particular might be useful? I'm worried that we did pass, and I will tell you sort of the direction, an anti-bullying legislation most recently, and enforcement is always difficult. So if we could sort of talk about what enforcement might look like.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilor Castro. So I think that I'm trying to figure out the exact question. I think that for the data points, are you talking about the narrative points? Are you talking about the?
So we're talking about diving more deeply into the data. And the part that I'm really concerned about is this sort of harassment and bullying that we're hearing.
Absolutely. So this, of course, this was an anonymous survey, and we wanted to make sure that that everybody felt safe when they were filling out this survey. So we wouldn't be able to identify if somebody, and of course it would be, we do look at it as a broader sense. And, if we felt as though there was some sort of cultural issue, we would address it. And as of right now, I don't see that. I think that in the survey results, if that had been brought up, then I think we would have absolutely addressed it. And right now, the HR does have a harassment training that they do offer on orientation. And so we've just talked about in the commission how we can enhance that and how we can make sure that if there's any improvements we can make based on this input from the survey. In addition, I think we would also welcome some feedback from our employees on what they would be how they would be comfortable reporting these types of harassment. So we didn't identify anything specifically alarming in these in the survey, but as we go through, and also harassment is, when we talk about that, it's not always the most it's not always these big situations. Sometimes it can be very minor. It can be somebody saying something. And so I think that in conjunction with the Women's Commission and our new resolution on bullying, I think these are great opportunities for my office to find solutions.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I did have some questions. We talked a little bit about childcare, but that wasn't one of the recommendations. What we were talking about parental leave, was that part of the conversation or part of the survey?
Yeah, most definitely childcare has also it's been a main topic since the inception. There's always been, even within the commission itself, we've been thinking, would we be able to use some of our budget to accommodate anyone who is caring for either, older or younger. So that is definitely still on our plate. I believe we just saw the urgent need for a parental leave policy first, as I'll be honest, I didn't know until this survey that the city didn't have parental leave. That really shocked me. So we are going to focus on that first, but we definitely still have childcare in the back of our minds, and we definitely want policies on that as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I might be coming up on my time limit, so I'll go ahead and cede the floor. Thank you.
As you wish. Thank you. We can come back around. Absolutely. Counselor, do you want
Thank
to?
you. I don't really have any questions. I just want to thank you for the work and the presentation. I think it's valuable work, advocacy that's needed. So thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Garcia, you want to go next, sir? If you were here, you'd be in your chair.
Sure. Happy to do so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to the presenters for this update and presentation. I really appreciate it. Will the survey results be provided to the council?
Mayor, Councilor Garcia, I sent out a report earlier, a little while ago, and this was presented. The raw data, though, we do keep that private, but the general report, I believe I sent it earlier. Did you receive it? Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure. So, and this was also presented, that survey report was presented last year. So, I hope this is a refresher for those of you who have been around, but yes. Let me know if you didn't receive it, and I'm happy to resend it.
Can I interrupt for 1 second, Counselor? Do you happen to know after the presentation whether that was posted on the city's website as part of the packet or follow-up afterward?
I don't know, it was not.
All right, well, let's see if we can get that to happen. Thank you. Back to you, Counselor Garcia.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's what I was going to ask, because I didn't see it part of the packet. And that's where I just wanted to make sure that as we're talking about this report, that the public has access to it. I appreciate the recommendations, that some of the initial recommendations that are made. I have some questions just based off of these initial recommendations, because they will require support and collaboration with the HR director. Have folks begun those conversations with Director Salazar?
Councilor Garcia, yes, Director Salazar has been invited to upcoming commission meetings. So her and I are working on what that will look like. But yes, I did extend an invitation, and honestly, we really couldn't do this work without her team. So we absolutely look forward to that collaboration.
Fantastic. Quick question regarding the current parental leave for the city of Santa Fe. Can you help maybe those folks that don't work for the city understand what the current policy is?
we have someone on the commission who can speak to that.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone.
Make sure
So-
you're very close to the mic, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
So my assumption, I'm not a city employee, but my assumption is that the city of Santa Fe offers family medical leave, which is either paid or unpaid leave for those who are out on medical leave. But it would not be paid parental leave. Paid parental leave would be in conjunction with family medical leave, but it would actually be paid out of your operating budget. So employees would not be using their own leave.
Right. So, and thank you for that clarification. So is it that city employees are only eligible for FMLA leave, which for those, for anybody that's not aware of FMLA, what FMLA is, it grants leave to an employee. It's most of the time not paid leave, but it's leave granted and the employee retains the right to their position. Am I?
So family medical leave is granted after you have established employment, after you've worked a certain amount of hours, which is normally 1 year. So after 1 year, they're eligible for paid or family medical leave. It's not necessarily unpaid. So you can use your leave, so annual sick leave, whatever leave balances the employee has. Normally government would make those employees use that leave prior to going on a leave without pay status.
Okay, and that is currently 8 weeks, if I'm,
12 weeks is
12.
480 hours.
okay. Okay, and so I guess the question is, just out of curiosity, what would the recommendation be to improve the program?
So paid parental leave would be ran in conjunction at the same time as family medical leave, but it would be the city granting administrative leave for these employees to take 12 weeks of paid leave without using their own accrued leave.
Okay, and I think maybe can chat offline, because I think that's what I just heard was that there was paid leave previously, and so.
Can I give an example, Counselor Garcia?
Sure, and let's put it in the context of
Yeah.
an individual either bringing home a new child, whether
I'm
it's-
happy to use my own experience. So I had accrued a certain amount of time throughout my time here, sick and annual leave. When I went on FMLA after I had my baby in January, I used my sick and my annual leave. And on top of that, we add FMLA, which is not a leave, it's actually a protection for your job. So that allows protection. So it's actually not a leave bank. So you use the leave bank that you've accrued over your time. And then in addition to the FMLA. So does that?
It does help. So, I mean, from
Mayor,
my
over
understanding,
councilors, I do want to clarify on that. So typically folks are using their leave against the total time for FML.
Mhm.
So FML is a certain amount of time that you do have a job protection, and typically you're using your annual and your sick leave against that total.
correct.
And
So
that's how
that
HR would generally process that.
and that's so that the individual continues to receive pay, because in the instances where an individual does not have leave, they still have the ability to take the leave, but it would be without pay and still retain their employment protection. And so, I guess the question is, I mean, because I would be in full support of looking at a program that mirrors what the federal government has, their parental leave program, which is 12 weeks paid leave. That way an individual does not have to utilize annual leave or sick leave, so they can retain those benefits. And then should they have the qualifying circumstance that would allow them for parental leave, they are eligible for those 12 weeks of leave. And I think that's where the city can determine, what does that look like? Is it 12 weeks consecutive? Can they break it out? Does it have to be used in a certain time period? Because I would like for us to be as flexible as possible with that. Because in an instance where an employee might have a partner where they might not need to use the 12 weeks up front when they experience the the new family member coming into their family. So I think that's, if I can recommend one thing to the Women's Commission is to look at the Federal Parental Leave Act and maybe begin to see if that would be something that the city can look into and adopt. As mentioned, that would come out of the city budget because the city, it's a benefit, it's an added benefit that would be supported by the operations budget to support parents. And I think it's worked very well for federal government employees. So I appreciate you all looking into this because one thing that has become clearly evident as a direct impact of the pandemic is those employers that can provide as much benefits to working parents are the employers where folks want to work for. And I definitely want the city to be an employer that supports working parents, an employer that has a blue ribbon model to support working parents. And as mentioned, we shouldn't just simply stop at initial parental leave. We should also explore childcare benefits as well, and how the city can support parents with childcare opportunities, because that is also a barrier to employment right now, is that parents are not entering the workforce due to the lack of childcare options. And so I think the city has a real opportunity to be a leader on this front. So many thanks to the presenters. I appreciate the feedback. Continue the great work. And with that, no other questions, Mr. Mayor. Have a good
Thank you,
evening.
Counselor. Thank you very much. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank you for the work on this. This report has aged well, and I think that it's probably is as valid today as it was the day that folks filled out the questionnaires. So thank you very much for the work and making the presentation to us tonight and making the presentation really giving us the Reader's Digest version of all the data that you collected and not making pages and pages of recommendations, giving us recommendations that are possible to implement. And that's very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Mayor
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you to the Women's Commission. I know you've had some stops and starts because of the pandemic, and I really appreciate your perseverance to just keep on plugging away at this. It's important work. We did pass earlier some legislation to create an Office of Equity and Inclusion. I think this work will land nicely there once we have a director. And I think this is something that we take very seriously and want to advance in. I just want to let you know, I'm thrilled to see that you have the paid family leave on your list of recommendations. I have been working with several counselors on that legislation, and we have been watching very closely what the state is doing, and have actually stepped back a bit for a moment as we wait to see if the state legislature is able to pass a law that would affect us and would essentially provide us the guidelines of what would need to be done. So this is good work. It is the paid family leave is something I think we all support. I, took advantage of it when I had my kids. I know how important it is. I think one of the tricky pieces of it, of course, is the financial end. And so we've got to really figure out what we can offer and how we start to integrate that. And I know there's good work going on at the legislative level. They've been very close to passing it, and completely support it, and look forward to supporting your efforts in addition to that one item. So thank you for the work. Thank you for hanging in there, and really look forward to helping you as you move these recommendations forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Counselor Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you all for being here. No questions, as I have met with you numerous times over the last couple of years, and do really want to emphasize the work and the thought that has gone into a number of our conversations, paid family leave, of course, being one of those, and the discussion of the different models and comparing us to what else is being offered, throughout the state and in comparable employers, as well as I know we've had some discussions around what's happening in other communities. And I would agree, paid family leave, when I gave birth to my son, I was in California and I had 5 months at 60% pay without having to touch any of mine. And that was incredible. So it is complicated. And one of the things that's worked so well in California is the fact that there is the state fund and how that piece works together. And so I know some of those have been conversations that have come up around how we look at this from, both the state advocacy place, but then also, if we have to move forward and figure this out in a different way, what are some of the other models that have been utilized? So I'm looking forward to the continued conversations around there, as well as I know we've discussed childcare as well as flexible schedules, which I didn't see in here. And again, I'm, unsure if that was more of we're going to look at priorities. But I know that's been a conversation that we've had, and I'd love to hear if that's still something that is on your radar for how parents, and which, dads are very involved these days. I will say that. I know plenty of dads that are very involved, but we also know that the data shows that it frequently falls on women to becoming, my kid gets out of school at 3:15 or 1:15 on Fridays, and for working on that, as well as sick days and all the days that we have off of school and what we don't have off of work. So is that something that is still being discussed along the lines of the family-friendly workplace?
Yes, and so these, excuse me, our initial recommendations, we started off with all the things, and then we're like, okay, no, we need to prioritize and have actionable items that we can start off with. We have other ones that are floating that we're working on. This will be moving forward. We'll have other recommendations, but these are our priorities first. So we are open to hearing other recommendations from you as well, as we're speaking. So thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I also see Director Nelson's in the room, which I don't know if you've connected yet with the Women's Commission on the work that we are doing with the Family Friendly Network. Is that the New Mexico Family Friendly? And Deputy City Manager Archuleta Maestas has also been working on. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring that work to the Women's Commission. This is also something that we're looking with some of our community partners, really talking to the Chamber of Commerce and other businesses and how we create family-friendly workplaces, which covers a lot of these different pieces. So I am very excited that as we move forward with that project, that we'll be able to come see you again and to talk about those. So thank you again so much for the work. Really looking forward as you do more of a deep dive that I know you've already begun, but as you start to really solidify some of these recommendations as we figure out how, the rubber meets the road with these things. They're very, the concept is always like, yes, we got to do this. And then of course, the actuality becomes much more challenging. So I am very appreciative to all of you for really being ready to grapple with how we implement these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, the data that was provided, the work that you're doing. And I think that I'm a stickler for kind of understanding the nuts and bolts of how it will work, how it's funded, because a lot of times that's the monkey wrench that's thrown in there. And how do you make the program go? One of the things that really stood out on your presentation to me was how we're respectful to each other, even in just in the workplace in general. And I think that we can take a lot of those recommendations and just try to spread that throughout our organization, developing a good culture. And when you have a good culture, where everyone understands what each and every other is doing, I think you do build a good team. And so just kind of comments, I would really like to see a little bit in the future of how this also connects to I guess our output as well, because you know, when we have people that are out on leave and things of that nature, somebody else has to step in. There is a job that they are doing and they're responsible for. And so I think that relates into the quality of service that we provide back to our communities, because that's what we're doing. And so also being mindful and respectful of each and everybody and how they also accrue their time. I think some of the comments or questions that were already asked are very valid, and how they work, but how do we make them work? I think that's the really root of it all. And how do we make it work well? And so there again, looking at how it's funded, how it affects our organization, and organization for everyone. And so just keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any follow-up? Are we all good? I just want to thank you all for great work. I was one of the originators of the Women's Commission. As a campaign promise I made, and I am so proud to see you standing here delivering on that hard work and on the promise and continuing it to implementation. So your service is greatly appreciated. And we look forward to after the first of the year when you're able to, I guess, flesh some of the recommendations out, give us more details about how to move forward on these priorities. They're very meaningful, and the overall purpose is incredibly important. And you all doing it in this capacity on this commission is a tremendous service to the city of Santa Fe. So thank you all for doing it. Appreciate it.
Mayor, one plug, we have some vacancies, so we will be putting out information for those that are watching at home or in the room today. Please take a look if you're interested in joining the commission, so.
Good. Thanks, everybody. Madam Clerk, what's our next presentation?
Next presentation is review of FY 25-26 internal audit plan and program overview. Presenting is Deputy City Manager Leila Archuleta Maestas and Chelsea Ritchie from Moss Adams.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the governing body. I'm really excited to be here today with Moss Adams to present our audit plan for 2025, our internal audit for 2025-2026. Before we get started, I want to just briefly discuss the purpose and function of our internal audit and just kind of do an opening for what you'll see all tonight from the presentation. So we'll get into a lot of these details throughout the presentation, but I just wanted to frame the conversation. So the internal audit function resides in my office now, in the city manager's office. And because it will audit departments across the city, we felt as though it was the most neutral area for this. And formerly it was in the finance, which does get audited. So we wanted to get it out of the there where it was previously located. The primary function of internal audits, which we'll explore more during our presentation tonight, is to identify opportunities for improvement. These audits serve as valuable management tools to help us enhance our processes. Welcoming, as I've mentioned in previous presentations, we welcome audits throughout the city. We want our cities to be audited to make sure that it allows us to ensure we are delivering the best possible services to both our employees and our constituents. And we use these audits as roadmaps for success. our directors and our employees continuously look back on these to make sure that we are following the recommendations. And as you'll see throughout the time that we do audits, we will frequently do updated management responses. So how are we continuing to look back on those recommendations? Tonight, we'll also cover some terms, internal auditing terms, including internal, and we'll also cover the difference between internal versus external, and then also high risk, low risk, risk management. And so I want to just clarify that terms like high risk often are associated with negative connotations, but in context of an audit, they shouldn't be, it does mean pressing, high priority, or worthy of further investigation. And keep in mind, we haven't started this audit process yet for the ones that we'll discuss in the audit. So our auditors aren't in a position right now to determine whether there are any significant issues to be concerned about, and those will come out, if an audit is done. So additionally, I want to make sure you're aware that the audit plan is based on the enterprise risk assessment. This report was developed through conversations our auditors, the ones here with me tonight, that were held with the governing body. So meetings with you all and the city leadership and city employees. The areas identified in the audit do reflect common themes that came up during these discussions, and we will learn more as these audits progress. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it over to Moss Adams.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and members of the governing body. Haley Garcia, thank you for having me tonight. I'm joined by Chelsea Ritchie, Director at Moss Adams, as well as on Zoom, Maria Stroth, Senior Manager with Moss Adams. Okay, so just wanted to provide an introduction since this is our first time coming and presenting to council. The city retained Moss Adams a little while back to act as the outsourced internal audit function and work collaboratively with management and with the audit committee. Our projects focus on a lot of different areas, including risks, internal controls, the efficiency and the effectiveness of operations and processes across the city, as well as how the city is comparing to best practices, benchmarking against other similar cities. And then we also look at compliance. Our work is completed under typically the AICPA consulting standards. We are here to help the city get better, to collaborate, to gain through that collaboration to identify opportunities to improve and help from the inside versus on the external side, which I'll talk about in a moment. So why have an internal audit function? One, it's a best practice for any governing entity. However, it does provide a much different perspective from an external audit. So your external auditors come in and they're looking at the accuracy of your financial statements. They're looking at your single audit grant compliance, and they're looking at the numbers, making sure that they're substantiated so that they can provide an opinion on your annual financial statements. On the internal audit side, we go much deeper and it's a much more collaborative approach. And so when we identify findings, they aren't the same as external audit findings that are going to go up to your funders and things of that sort. They are meant to be a tool for management and the governing body to use to help improve operations, improve efficiency, improve employee morale, better controls, protect yourself against different control issues. And so it is an objective and independent view on the city's operations or the functional area that we're looking at to come in from the outside to say, how does the city compare to other cities? Where are there opportunities to implement best practices, gain efficiencies, and reduce risks? It does go beyond just the finance department. While the finance department is an area that is included in any internal audit function, we also look at high-risk areas or moderate-risk areas across the county. So where are the biggest opportunities to gain improvements across the city? So we'll look at operations in all the various programs and departments, as well as within finance, HR, procurement, et cetera. We try in any area that we audit to look at a comparison to best practices, to say what are best practices in that area and do they make sense for your city to implement. We also make sure that in performing the internal audit function that we're having an alignment with the strategic goals and the strategic plan of the city. I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea.
Thank you, Haley. All right, so this is a really good graphic that we thought you all might enjoy seeing because it really shows the different structures and roles of all the different areas that internal audit is covering. So first looking at the governing body, so governing body receives reports, they receive recommendations from the internal auditors as well as management on what will be best practice going forward for the city. And, as the governing body, you are really responsible for helping lead management and guiding them to make those decisions. And as you can see, management, internal audit, and governing body, we're a collaboration. There should be constant communication between these three bodies. Internal audit will be, speaking and presenting to the governing body, but we're also talking with management. And one of the big philosophies that Moss Adams has is we want to make sure that management and the internal audit are on the same page. And if we aren't, that we both have our objective reasons why not. And those are voiced to you. So it really is a 3-line model. And I would like to also show that the external assurance, so your external audit, that is to the side. That's on the very right of this illustration. And that's important because they are doing independent analysis of your financials. So they are not having the collaboration between governing body and management. They are an independent outsourced function that really isn't working collaboratively with you all. So I thought it was important to also show, what are best practices for establishing the city's internal audit program. Moss Adams, we got this contract signed back in November. That's when we started our work and really, hit the ground running. And, doing this for, over 10 years, I can say that successful internal audit programs always have that communication as well as collaboration. And how do we do that? This is what we have been working towards with the city these past 6 or I guess 9 months now, but really understanding, goals and objectives, as well as educating and communicating key stakeholders. So management, the audit committee, finance committee, as well as you all as the governing body. And then, the most important thing is we establish that program baseline. And Haley and Layla, they mentioned that earlier. So when we come into a new audit program, it's really important that we conduct an entity-wide risk assessment, which you all were involved with your interviews. So we talked to numerous individuals across the city, as well as the governing body, to understand different risks and identify, recommendations going forward for our audit plans. Another project that we are currently underway with is our internal risk assessment or internal control review, excuse me. And so that's really looking at the internal controls specific to finance. So, we're looking broad spectrum at the enterprise risk assessment across the city, as well as taking a little finer magnifying glass at the internal controls in place that, for financial resolution of the city. And so with those two projects, that really helps us develop our internal audit plan. And we were asked to develop an internal audit plan for 2 fiscal years. And this will really be a driver going forward for what we want to take a deeper dive into. Once we obtained that approval, which went to the audit committee and finance committee, then we start carrying out our program. And so that's where we are today. We have, you know, Haley's going to discuss our 2-year internal audit program. And, you know, we're doing those projects as well as getting constant feedback. So we have bi-weekly meetings with Layla's team to check in, as well as with the individual programs that we're working with. Our internal audit approach. So our projects are always usually into 4 different phases. And this is really important because it kind of shows management where we are in our process. So phase number 1 is our startup kickoff. This is really when we solidify that work plan, make sure that all key stakeholders are involved in the project. And we want to hear from city what they want to get out of this project. What is important for, you know, moving this forward. And that takes us into our fact-finding phase. And this is really where we're, you know, combing over documents, policies and procedures, conducting walkthroughs with specific individuals. Sometimes we will administer a survey if that is appropriate. And from that, we can really start gathering preliminary findings, and we'll present those to management. So this is just based off of the documentation and the walkthroughs that we, you know, have obtained thus far. And that walks us into phase number 3, which is analysis. So, you know, based off of those, you know, the fact-finding phase, we will do some, you know, test work. We might select a judgmental sample to really make sure we can see and walk through the internal controls that are in place. Like Haley mentioned, this is the fundamental area where we compare to best practices. We benchmark you against other cities of your size so you can see where you rank with other cities comparable to you all. We'll present a draft finding to management. A lot of feedback goes into that back and forth. We have an exit meeting with management and takes us into phase number 4, which is our reporting phase. This is where we submit the reports to, you know, management and then start doing, you know, talking to the governing bodies, audit committee, that goes to finance committee, you know, for approval, and then to you all via consent. With this, I'm going to hand it over to Layla to kind of give a background and history of the city's internal audit program prior to Moss Adams.
Thank you, Chelsea. So prior to 2017, the internal audit was done by a city employee, an internal employee. And then the McCard report came out in 2017. And in that McCard report, it did point out a few issues. One, there were some findings that the employee was missing. It was a single person doing these audits. So there were some things that were they weren't catching. And then in addition, there was also so based on that, the McCard report recommended that a couple things happen. They recommend that we go to an outside contractor that has more, this contractor would have staff to be able to do a much more in-depth audit. And then it also recommended that we frequently, or we change contractor from time to time to create a new perspective. And then it also recommended the creation of the audit committee. And that is where we stand today with the audit committee.
Thank you, Layla. So, you know, coming back to what Moss Adams does thus far, where we are today, it's really important to talk about, you know, the chain of events. So all projects performed each fiscal year is based off of that audit plan. Like I mentioned, there is the ordinance for the audit committee. There is no amount of projects, a certain amount of projects that have to be done. It's strictly just looking at, you know, what is in budget for that fiscal year. You know, and like I mentioned before, those projects really will be derived from the enterprise risk assessment as well as the internal control review. But it's important, and especially as we get more and more down the line and, you know, next fiscal year, that obviously projects can change, and that's okay and that's good. Really making sure, you know, we're talking with management constantly, hopefully hearing from you all And if there is a certain project that needs to take place, by all means, we can, make that a priority for the next audit plan. I think it's also, really important to remember that we work for you all. So hearing your input as well as, your comments really will make the city's internal audit function that much more successful. So kind of the chain of events, once we go to that report, we have those meaningful recommendations from those internal audits, and those are presented to the city's audit committee for recommendation. They get a full-blown report, as well as to the city manager, finance committee, and governing body. So the city manager's office, as well as, the internal audit function, will make sure that we present to the audit committee and the finance committee. And once it gets to the governing body, this is, usually in a consent agenda item. Similar to other cities, I did want to point out, there's always opportunities for improvement. Don't take it, don't take offense to lots of different findings. That's a good thing. That means, we have recommendations. We want to move forward with the city. And really we see this, we work with numerous of other cities across the nation, and they all have their own issues. That could be staffing shortages, budget cuts, issues behind on external audits. So really, making sure to take the internal audit program in stride and really use it as a tool to go forward, with providing solutions to make the city better. Haley?
All right, Mayor and members of the governing body, we're almost done here. So one thing that we wanted to clarify that Layla hit on earlier there are 3 different risk rating scales that we use when doing any internal audits. So it's high, moderate, or low. And these mean something different when it comes to internal audit. Because you have a high risk finding, it doesn't mean the city's on fire, this is really bad type thing. It means that, hey, this is a high priority area where the recommendation that is coming from it should be considered and addressed within approximately 3 months, depending on how big the recommendation is, because it could have a significant impact or a high likelihood of loss, misappropriation, or damage for the city. A moderate risk is one step lower than that. And typically with those, we recommend that the city address the recommendation within approximately 6 months, if that is reasonable, that there's opportunities there that could provide a lot of benefit to strengthen or enhance the efficiency, the effectiveness of operations. And low risk findings, we typically don't present to the governing body on those. Those definitely go to management in the full report, but the city is not likely to have significant losses or significant drawbacks for these. However, they are opportunities to improve, and management should consider implementing them within 12 months. We are going to be working, you'll see on the audit plan, to implement a follow-up internal audit process with the city, or to carry that out. To make sure that recommendations are being considered, they are being addressed, and we are presenting back to those charged with governance on where those findings stand today. Going into the fiscal year 25 and 26 audit plan, this has been presented and approved by the audit committee and to the finance committee. For fiscal year 25, as I mentioned, we will be following up on previous audits. So there's about 4 or 5 prior audit reports that had recommendations that we have inventoried along with Layla, made sure that we have that full population, and are following up with management on those as we speak. We'll then be looking at the city's month and year-end close, internal controls and processes. We'll then be looking at the fraud, waste, and abuse program to identify if there are opportunities to improve it through best practice implementation, as well as through some fraud training and fraud awareness training for city employees. And then number 4 here, we'll be helping with policy updates. One of the big things that we've seen across the city, which is we see with almost every city that we work with, is the need for comprehensive, well-documented policies and procedures that are current and represent current practices. So we'll be doing some work in collaboration with management to get those updated and current for key areas of the city. And lastly, for fiscal year 25, we'll be doing a procurement operational review, looking at the procurement process and how it aligns with city goals, policies, and industry best practices. In fiscal year 26, if all goes as planned, again, this are subject to change if higher priority projects come up, but we'll be focusing on a grant management operational review, looking at how the city is managing grants across programs and departments. We'll be looking at a cash balances internal audit, looking at the controls over physical cash receipts and cash handling and how that's being managed and reported. We'll be looking at a risk management operational review, assessing the city's risk management functions, including the staffing, the structure, and the processes. And lastly, we'll be looking at a recruitment process review, looking at the efficiency and effectiveness of the recruitment life cycle and identifying opportunities for possible improvement.
Beautiful. Thank you.
you.
We'll do what we did with the prior presentation. We'll just take, everybody will have an opportunity for about a 10-minute, if you need it or want it, use up to 10 minutes to ask questions or comment on the presentation about the internal audit. And I will start this time to my left with Councilor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the report, and I think that questions and going back to getting reports such as this, how do we put it into action? I think that's the million-dollar question, right? How do you take this information that's provided that, obviously identified a lot of times we already know what issues are that we have, but how do we also create processes for ourselves and as governing body members to really truly address the root problems that we are having? And I'd like to maybe speak a little bit, or if you can answer that, because we can do reports and presentations and we can do that until we're blue in the face. But if we're not utilizing it to really truly fix the issues that we're having, then we're just kind of spinning our wheels. And I just kind of maybe touch a little bit on how do we take the information that you're providing and roll with it.
Definitely. Thank you for the question, Councilor Garcia. With the internal audit function and the overview that we provided tonight about the internal audit function, what our hope is to develop and enhance the city's current internal audit function to have that continuous monitoring that goes on or that will be going on, where we are tracking prior recommendations, constantly working with management to get those updates to say where's the city at, is progress being made, and coming up with a process to report back to the governing body on where the city is with implementing those recommendations. So as we start carrying out these individual internal audits that are presented in the audit plan, and we start having actual internal audit findings that we're reporting to you all, those will come along with recommendations that we've fully vetted with management, along with management responses. When we have those, we'll be coming to the point where we are in a continuous follow-up process where we're reporting back along with the city manager's office on what the progress has been made in each of the areas where deficiencies are identified.
Thank you. And once again, obviously we all want to be a part of the solution. And I think that a lot of times when I talk to community members and they're like, well, there's this problem in this department and there's a problem in that department, or people who actually are employees of the city. And says, well, have you talked to your directors? Have you gone all the way up to the chain? And how do we address these issues? And again, I think that that's really important. Again, obviously to have an outside set of eyes on things, because sometimes we just get caught up in the day-to-day and, oh, everything's fine. And it's really not, and there's a lot of issues, and I think that's just with any organization. I believe that there was another report that you had with this at other committee levels that actually showed identified some of the areas of deficiencies. And I didn't see that in this packet here or in this presentation. Was that not something that was going to be brought forth tonight?
It is the enterprise risk assessment, which you are referring to, was presented to the audit committee in detail and discussed briefly at the finance committee. It is not on the agenda for the governing body.
Thank you. Well, and I think in that report, and I know it's not here tonight and we're not discussing that, but it did identify some areas preliminarily. But I think that in the future, I do hope that we really identify those issues and how we can collaboratively work on those to make our, obviously the city better, which in turn goes back to the community and makes everything well. So just comments, not too many questions tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cassett?
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and thank you for the presentation. Obviously, we did have a pretty robust conversation at finance, so I don't have too many questions. It sounds a little nerdy, but I get really excited actually for the internal audit because, you know, as Councilor Garcia mentioned, in any organization, we know that there's going to be hiccups and challenges and areas for improvement. And so I really do appreciate this process, especially you know, at finance, we're kind of dragging back in our memories and recalling some of the other areas that we've looked at and that we've seen improvement in. So you know, these components, I think, really do speak to some of the challenges that we have seen with the city. And as we move forward in addressing some of these issues that we have all mentioned, I'm excited for you all to get moving on those and for us to see those updated reports and see that improvement as we have in the past. I know that part of the process has been you interview us. We've spoken with you and talked about our specific concerns, recommendations, areas that we would like you to look at. Obviously, we see a plan for 25 and 26. I'm curious if will you guys follow up with us again in these 2 years as this moves forward? You know, so what can we expect in terms of those one-on-one conversations when we do really have the opportunity to relay, you know, as Councilor Garcia mentioned, things that we hear and as those things shift. If you could just speak a little bit more to that, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. So we will be updating the enterprise risk assessment probably every 2 to 3 years, depending on the changing landscape of the city and the need to do that. However, with the audit committee as well as the governing body in full, you do have a direct line to internal audit. And that is one thing that makes us independent and objective. Although we collaborate and report administratively to management, we present and report functionally to those charged with governance. And so with many of the cities, the counties, local governments that we work with, they are calling us when there are concerns or when there's questions coming up. So you do have that direct line to myself and my team that's out there performing these audits if there's specific input outside of the meetings that anyone would want to provide or to ask questions. On the regular, we will be coming back and presenting the results of individual internal audits and the follow-up audits that we do as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then as I'm looking at the, you know, schedule, I guess you couldn't do all of these. Well, you could. Are these going to be kind of the chronological order in which these are addressed? Do they happen together? You know, what does that schedule look like? And in terms of when these are addressed? Recruitment process is actually one that I'm curious about it being in FY26, because I know that some of the challenges we have seen have to do with our vacancies. So I'm curious why that one was jump to the second year as opposed to the first, with just my assumption based on what we have heard. And maybe I'm wrong, that some of these challenges that we're seeing in the other areas that you have mentioned actually have to do with the fact that these positions aren't filled. And so we have individuals having to cover another position while still doing their own role. So can you speak a little bit to both the chronological order and also the decision around when that particular piece comes up?
Yeah, the chronological order is not what it is on the slide. What we do is at the beginning, once the audit plan is approved at the audit committee level, we work directly with management to slate them for an order that makes sense. For instance, we don't want to do finance intensive one during your external audit. Same thing with, some of the various areas. It's not good to be doing it right after calendar year end or fiscal year end. And so what we're doing is slating those right now. We're actually kicking off the follow-up internal audit piece where we're following up on prior ones. We're doing that right now. And in September, we're also kicking off the policy and procedure support. And then we have the month-end, year-end close for fiscal year 25 shortly after the external audit is wrapped and presented by finance to make sure that any of the recommendations that come out of that can be implemented prior to the next fiscal year audit occurring. As far as the recruitment process, we could definitely slate that for early in 2026. When we were looking at and working with management to kind of move up and down where we thought higher risk or greater reward was at the time, it was one that was in the middle kind of. While there's some big opportunities for improvement, there was a lot of good recommendations, I think, that came out of the enterprise risk assessment that are currently being worked on. And so going in there in early fiscal year 2026, next summer, seemed like an appropriate timeline.
Mayor, Councilor Cassett too. For some of the ones that ended up on fiscal year 26, there was some significant improvements we were going to make to the processes. So that would include cash handling. There's some software that the finance team is going to implement, and they want to wait till that was done to audit it. This is the same for the recruitment. Right now, my office is working with our HR team and our administrative managers to make some adjustments. And so I think that to our recruitment process. So I think once those are implemented, then I think that that would be, we can look at the new shiny process and see how all that's working. So.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I do appreciate that because that is a much more efficient use of your time if there are already things that are being planned within the department. So thank you for that. And it makes sense. I'm assuming my time is just about up, so I will yield the floor and thank you all so much again.
Thank you. And Councilor Mayor Worth.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor Cassett. I was just thinking, you've been talking a while.
Let's be honest, she was ratting you out, Councilor Cass.
But I was appreciating the questions you were asking and the answers you were getting. So I was sort of enthralled. And then I was like, oh, wait, I think it's time. Anyway, thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you for the presentation you made at finance. And for this one, I think this one is much sharper and I really appreciate it. I guess I want to emphasize a couple things. First of all, this is, I think, the first time we have done what I will call a comprehensive internal audit plan. We've never, I don't know that we've, at least in my years here, we haven't done an enterprise risk assessment. We haven't used that report to help identify where to dial in, and we haven't laid out kind of a 2-year plan the way we're doing here. I think was mentioned that you're going to follow up in the first year on the previous audits, but those were sort of one-offs and maybe done, I don't know how we decided to do them, but maybe there were just sort of areas in city government that really did seem like they needed a deeper dive to make sure that we understood or what, that we could figure out what things we needed to do to make improvements. And so I think you mentioned 5 previous internal audits. Did I catch that right?
Yes, on the list that we're going to follow up with, I believe there's 5 with findings.
Okay. And again, I think they were, just sort of one-offs. This one is the first time that we've used a report. We've used these interviews that you all have done with the governing body, with staff, with a survey, and really looking at kind of the landscape before you dive in. And I guess, and I appreciate the reference to the McCard report, because I think that is, sometimes these things take time. Getting an internal audit committee was a direct result of things identified in that report. And then, this moment we're in now, we're really doing a comprehensive internal audit. And I guess I would like you just to confirm that my understanding is also yours.
Mayor, Councilor Romero Worth, that is my understanding. When I started in a few years ago now, I was working with our current auditors, and there was something called an enterprise risk assessment, but it was the audit plan. So, and I'm not sure where that had come from, but from my understanding, this is really more comprehensive. So yes, confirming.
Okay, that's kind of lines up, and I don't know, maybe our senior counselor down here will confirm that that's the way she remembers it as well. Almost called her a senator. No. Okay, and I just a couple other things. Something that really perked my ear is when you said that in this work you'll be comparing us to other cities of a similar size. And I'm very interested in that. Maybe you could speak to that just a little bit, because I think it helps us to put ourselves in context of, what are the kinds of things that cities struggle with. We're, maybe not alone in some of these struggles. Sometimes we can look to them for solutions and for timelines about how things, how long it takes to make improvements and that kind of thing. So when you said that, it perked my interest, and maybe you could just comment on the importance of that piece on the overall work.
Yeah, definitely. So depending on the area that we're specifically looking at and the type of project that we're doing, we always evaluate whether there's a need or a benefit for doing pure benchmarking. If those are, if that's going to add value for the area, if it's going to be helpful for us to compare to what other cities are doing, then we will identify those cities that are similar in size, functionality as the city of Santa Fe. We'll actually meet with them, get insights into the specific program or department or function that we're looking at for that internal audit, and then we'll benchmark the city against those. So it can be very valuable on some of the performance audits, efficiency studies, organizational assessments, depending on which area we're looking at, will depend on what type or what level of peer benchmarking we do.
Okay, that's helpful. And I think that's, to an earlier point, exciting piece of this is to get that kind of context for things that we're dealing with. I don't really have any other questions. I look forward to this work and this collaboration. And I think this is really an important step for the city to be in our continual move to professionalize and modernize city government. I think this is a big, important step. So thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I did have a couple of questions, but Councilor Romero Worth just covered the main question that I had curiosity about, and the whole benchmarking with other cities. I think that's really, really valuable to this work. And it also allows us to know, where we're standing comparatively. And that's an important part of this work for us. So thank you for going into that, Counselor. I didn't have any other questions. Thank you.
Councilor Michael Garcia, if you were in your chair, you'd be up next, sir. So it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you to Deputy Director or Deputy City Manager Maestas Archuleta and the Moss Adams team. I really appreciate this update. I must say I'm quite disappointed though in the content of the presentation, given that requests previously have been for us as a governing body to discuss the results of the enterprise risk assessment versus the process. The results is actually where we need to take action. And every day that this governing body does not converse and discuss how we are going to appropriately address the high risk in particular matters, it's a day late. And so I guess my question is why was that not a focus of the presentation, given that that was a previous request, at least on behalf of myself and several counselors, that was made months ago?
Counselor Garcia, I'm not, we felt as though that the audit plan addressed the enterprise risk assessment findings. And so when I was under the impression that the audit plan would suffice, that, and I'm not sure if that exact request came to me, and I'm sorry if that's missed the mark on that. But I think the audit plan is addressing those issues. So I do think that what we are presenting tonight is very important. And I do feel as though we're taking actions on the enterprise risk assessment. We are working on them. And to say we're not, I think is not factual.
Okay, so just for some context, the fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26 audit plan is a total of 9 items to be addressed. If we look at the enterprise risk assessment, there are 7 items that are rated as high. Then there's this category that wasn't spoken about tonight, but they're identified as moderate to high category, which is another 5 items. And then when you get into the moderate items, that's 6. So that's 18 items that are either high, moderate to high, or moderate. And the plan is half that. And going off of the recommendations in regards to address the issues, from what I heard was that high risk items should be addressed within 3 months, moderate items within 6 months. So if we're just looking at the high items, we've already passed that timeline, given that this report was submitted to the city manager and deputy city manager on June 4th. So we're beyond the 3 months. And I have been yet to get any information besides the plan that was proposed for the fiscal year 25 plan in regards to what actions have been taken to address these 7 high items, given the recommendation from Moss Adams is that they should be addressed within 3 months. So that question is for city staff. What actions have been taken to address the 7 items that have been indicated as high? And I'm happy to go over those for folks, since we did not get the report presented to us. As identified as high risk, we've got accounting and finance, capital improvement program, human resources, organization and staffing, planning and strategy, procurement and contracting, and risk programs. Those are all high impact, with the majority of those, if not super majority, are a high likelihood of happening. And then when we get into the preparedness categories, they're either low or moderate. And so that's deeply concerning to me that we're not focusing on the actual information and data and working to address these issues. And we're getting a presentation on process. As a city councilor, I'm held accountable to ensure that we are operating the city at a highest efficiency and highest quality manner possible for residents. And when I do not have the opportunity to begin to really work to address these issues, it's doing a disservice to the residents of Santa Fe. And I understand that the audit committee is going to be looking at these issues, but I believe the work that has been identified through this enterprise risk assessment is not covered in the fiscal year 25 and 26 audit plan. As I mentioned, 9 items are looked at to be audited through that plan. There's 18 that are either high risk, moderate to high risk, or moderate. So I guess my question to staff is, why is the city council not really working or allowed the opportunity to begin to address these issues? And we can work in collaboration with the audit committee.
Just to clarify, the risk ratings that we presented tonight, the high risk, moderate risk, and low risk, those are when we are issuing internal audit reports that have findings within them. Those are the ones that we're going to work with the city to address within the 3-month, the 6-month, and the 12-month plan. When it comes to the enterprise risk assessment, Maria, are you on the line? Do you want to talk about the purpose of the enterprise risk assessment and the ability to be a management tool and kind of what those risk ratings represent?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Maria Stroth, Senior Manager at Moss Adams, and I was the lead on the enterprise risk assessment. So absolutely, just sort of echoing the conversation so far, the enterprise risk assessment is an excellent tool for the city in a number of ways. It informs the internal audit plan, so helps us think about what are areas and projects we can look into where internal audit can provide meaningful support to the city to advance some of those items and reduce risk for the city. So those are areas that you see on the audit plan. And then outside of that, it's also a tool for management to use to start to think about reducing risk more broadly than that. Typically, what we'll see is that there are risk owners for these different areas, right? So we want the accounting and finance, you want your CFO, your accounting director to be looking at risks in those areas. And we do know that a lot of that work is already started. So in finance, they're working on catching up on past financial audits. They're almost there. They're looking at efforts to improve the month-end close procedure, which, as Haley mentioned, we'll be doing a review of that later on to be able to follow up on that. So there are a lot of activities that are ongoing, sort of managed by the different departments who oversee these different areas in the risk report. And then the other thing too is, one of the reasons I think policies and procedures was a key theme throughout the entire risk assessment. And one of the reasons you see that on the internal audit plan is because focusing on that can really help to reduce the city's risks in a lot of these other areas that you may not see specifically called out in the audit plan, but is a way that we can support city and we can support the management team in reducing risks in other areas as well as we move forward. So it's a tool that can be used in a lot of different ways, but absolutely agree with you. And, management should be using it as a tool in terms of how to reduce risk in the areas that they oversee.
Thank you, Ms. Stroth. And so I guess my question, I'll pose it for city staff. Is the governing body going to be afforded an opportunity to discuss the enterprise risk assessment results as a body? And is the governing body going to be allowed an opportunity to begin to address these issues?
Mr. Mayor, Councilor Garcia, if I may, I think the city's, I would defer to the deputy city manager, but I don't believe that we consider what's been submitted in the presentation to be the final result. This is the kickoff to the project. So they've identified the things we need to be working on. City staff are beginning to work on it. And I think from our perspective, this back and forth that we're having right now is an opportunity for you to weigh in and tell us. I can't tell if you're suggesting that you'd like to be in the office in City Hall every day in meetings about this, or if that's the role you're looking to play. But I think for us, this isn't the end point. one of my colleagues made the sort of the reference earlier that, when you get the score of the game, you get the score at the end of the game, not after the first quarter. And we sort of feel like we just kicked off the beginning of the game and now we're moving to do the work to get to the end. So I don't know if there's confusion on my part but that's, I think, the perspective that we have as city staff right now. We're starting the project now.
And thank you, City Manager Blair, but by all due respects, this is not a game. We're operating city government, and we can't look at it from that context. What we're getting is a health check report, basically, from this report, and saying it's the way I'm interpreting it is there are some concerns with our health, and I, as a governing body member, want to begin to bring up the government's health.
Counselor,
Last question I've got.
there you go. Thank you, sir.
Mr.
Did
Mayor, if I
Moss
may as well.
Adams or
Go ahead, Counselor Garcia.
so as we're beginning to look at these fiscal year audit plans, are the external audit findings taken into consideration to give priority to begin to conduct internal audit reviews? Because there are some issues that have been identified as findings through the external auditing process that I think would prioritize some of these audit plan items, these 9 items, such as the cash balance. That's a reoccurring challenge. And I understand, as you mentioned, there are some changes that are planned to be made, but I think it would be helpful to begin to work in collaboration with staff to make that as transparent as possible for the public to understand what the changes are, when the changes should be made, and when to expect to have them completed. So I guess back to the question is there any cross-reference or consideration taken into account when with utilizing the previous fiscal year internal audits to determine these audit plans that have been identified?
Mayor, Councilor Garcia, the internal auditors and the external auditors do work in not collaboration, I'm sorry. The internal auditors do use the external audit reports in their auditing. In addition, so I did mention that the cash balance, so that is not actually looking at our money. That's not looking at our numbers. That is the function of the external audit. What we're referring to is how we handle cash, the systems that we use, et cetera. And when I spoke with Director Oster on this, we are implementing a software through Munis that would help with our cash handling. And so throughout the city. And so that is what we're referring to when we say cash balance. It is not the work of the internal auditors to look at numbers. So it is, that's an external audit function.
There's nothing that would prevent us, I believe, though, from conducting an internal audit on that matter, though. Am I wrong in that assumption?
Council, I'm gonna move on to a next counselor and we can come back around, sir. Been a lot more than 10 minutes and I know you had a lot you wanted to cover and we'll come back. Counselor Chavez.
Thank you. And I want to clarify how I'm interpreting things and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong or so when I see the report that was emailed to us in July, I see this as there's multiple opportunities. First, as a city official, I could partner with other city officials as we do with all other legislation that we pull through or policy that we push through to address issues that the report has heightened. I don't think necessarily a discussion would have to prompt that work. But I also see the second part of this as this is items that this is telling our departments what they need to work on. And we do not supervise city staff. So it wouldn't be us dictating when or what or how they should be starting this. We would assume, and if we have questions, because we're not sure they're doing it, we could reach out to those directors and make sure that they are addressing this as city officials or ask questions about it. We cannot dictate it because we are not their supervisor. But I imagine, and it sounds like there's systems that we're exploring already in multiple departments that are addressing these issues. So I don't think that this work, and I just want to make this clear, and like I said, I'll give you a chance to correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there was a pause once the report was sent to us. I think that city staff started working on it and we hear systems. And I think if any city official that's part of this governing body felt passionate enough to jump on one of these and partner with a co-counselor or two, they had every right to do that. So I just want to clarify that that would be an appropriate process, correct? And that is what's occurring with our city leadership.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilor Chavez. Yes, that is correct. There has not been a pause. We have continuously worked. And I do appreciate your comment about the legislation. I want to thank you for being part of the solution to our issues.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to clarify because, I don't want any of our community members to think that we have to have a whole governing body discussion to initiate work. We were given this information in a timely manner. The report is very detailed, and if we felt urgency to address any issue here as a city official in regards to policy, then we had every right to do so. So I just want to make that clear for the public. I do have questions, and I may have missed I may just be confused. In regards to the benchmark peer, you mentioned that the comparison, you look at size and functionality. Can you define what that is, both size and functionality? Like when we're talking about size, are we talking about demographic size, not just the size of population of a city? When we're talking about functionality, are we looking at all aspects of the individuals that are within that city? Like what are the details that go into both size and functionality?
Yes, Maria, are you on the line?
I am, yes.
You want to provide a summary on that?
Sure, happy to answer that. So when we're doing a performance audit or an assessment or any type of engagement where peer benchmarking would be helpful or useful for the city, we really think about it within the context of that topic. So for example, if we're looking at the city's permitting process, we'd want to think about what are cities that have comparable structures and setups as it relates to permitting. So that might look a little bit different depending on the project. Sometimes cities do have a standard list of peers that they like to look at and compare themselves to in every project. And so we're also happy to have those sorts of conversations with management and have that standard list as well, and then be able to flex if the topic sort of requires that type of flexibility to make it the most useful comparison for the city.
And I think it's also just what adds value to the data. I think we recognize as a community that Santa Fe is very different for a lot of many reasons. And I think that sometimes when we don't use appropriate cities as comparisons, which we've done in the past, our community is very loud about it. And then the efforts we put forth to address issues are not valued as much as they would have been if we would have really been intentional about these comparisons. Our community members know that we're very diverse, we're very different, and we have certain struggles that really define some of the deficits within how we operate. And I think if we don't find an accurate comparison, I just don't want this process to lose meaning because it could offer so much guidance. And I want our community members to be very confident in the data, so that they feel driven to be part of like the process and the change that it brings on. So I just really want to stress that if we could be very intentional and mindful about just that comparison process, I'd appreciate it. I think our community members would as well. And I think that is it. I feel like I'm forgetting a question, but if I remember it, I'll ask again.
Come back around.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Castro.
Okay, thank you again very much for the presentation. Lots of wonderful comments from my co-counselors, and I want to thank everyone for really digging deep. I think the reason that we have these questions is we care deeply about how to make the city work better. And I want to say that I think, and this is a very personal opinion, that we have started to work on some of these things. I think that in particular, I'm excited that we're making government accessible to our constituents and to our community. And that was one of the things that was sort of listed. That being said, I want to talk a little bit about participation in the survey. It seemed a little bit low from my perspective, in particular with city employees. Is there any reason why folks might either be overburdened and not be able to do it, or just not super comfortable answering questions?
Maria, do you want to answer that?
Absolutely, yes. It is a little bit of a lower response rate than we typically see. It's not that much lower. We'll typically see a response rate around 20% with other cities and counties that we work with. So it's not anything particularly alarming at a 14% rate. It was a little bit lower than we expected, of course. And I do think it's because this is a new process, is my guess here. This is a new process for city employees to engage in something like this. It is a lot of education and awareness building that needs to happen around these kinds of concepts of internal audit and risk. And so my hope would be that as we kind of move forward, more and more staff are able to engage with this type of work in a meaningful way.
Perfect. And I would sort of just as a comment request that maybe we have some meetings to go more in depth. I know that it's a lot of information. I mean, in the report we got in July, I also noticed that some things that were high risk weren't necessarily considered high risk by staff. Can you tell me a little bit about why those got bumped up, or maybe it's because they're the low hanging fruit?
Absolutely. That's super, super, super common. We almost always see staff rating the risk levels much lower than we would rate them. And often that is because staff, they have awareness of what's going on within the work that they're doing sort of individually, but may not have that sort of cross-cutting, cross-functional awareness that we're able to see through our work. And so but again, that's really common to see those lower ratings from staff.
Perfect. And I guess one final comment would be that I want to commend everyone for taking on this task because it's tremendous, it's huge, and it's also super intersectional. So to try to rank things on what's more important and what we should do first is super difficult. I like seeing that HR is up high because it seems like that is one of the things that we're struggling with on a lot of different levels, either retention or folks being able to report discrimination, or all these different areas where we could improve seem to sort of focus around HR. And so I would also suggest that maybe we meet with Director Salazar and see how we can implement this citywide. Thank you so much. And I cede the floor.
Thank you. Councilor Chavez, you didn't use your whole 10 minutes. You had one more question you wanted to ask.
Thank you. I knew I had one more. It's more of a comment. I feel like oftentimes when we have reports that have this data and have actionable steps, I don't think we roll it out appropriately with staff sometimes. So I just wanted to make the comment that staff feel part of the discussion in regards to action, so it doesn't seem or feel punitive. Because I think when we make a list of what needs to improve or what needs to be done, and then we have those that are on the front lines doing the work and suddenly they're having to switch directions or be told how to do things differently, making it seem like what they were doing already with great effort was insufficient. It just leaves a bad taste. And I think then we're just creating a larger problem. So I would like even before I know any information, I would hope that our department heads are having constructive conversations with their staff about these results before any of us know anything, or the community, so that they are comfortable with the delivery of how we receive this information. So that we're truly addressing like the fact that no one wanted to fill out the survey because they felt uncomfortable and they felt like they couldn't trust the process. I feel like that's a way that we can mend it. So I don't want them to feel, caught off guard or surprised. So like I said, I recommend the process being information given to department leads having productive, meaningful conversations with their staff. Staff's a part of it. Staff's aware of the steps to address it before it's announced to us and made public, out of respect for the work that our employees are already doing. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you, Counselor. I have a couple quick questions. I know I'm going to not use my whole 10 minutes, but I want to just highlight a couple things. A couple of our council members were very interested in the idea that the results need to be benchmarked in some cases against other cities. I want to take it in the other direction. You mentioned in your earlier presentation that you do this kind of work all over the country with a lot of different kinds of cities. When you looked at Santa Fe, did you see anything different?
Maria, do you want to take that from the risk assessment perspective?
Absolutely. These are super common results to have sort of a spread across the different risk levels. And in particular, when you're doing sort of the first risk, enterprise-wide risk assessment at this comprehensive of a level, to see a few more categories in those higher and moderate to high risk categories, super common. So not anything unusual that I would point out.
Okay. It seems to me, and I may be leaping to a conclusion, but if I'm wrong, please correct me, that what we're getting, thanks to you all, is pretty much standard operating procedure. And it's a way to make city government work better. You assess, you get input on what we need to work on. You go to work on the things that are at the highest priority. Somebody mentioned low-hanging fruit. That I understand that as a metaphor. We're not really in the orchard business. But there could be circumstances where low-hanging fruit is easier to pick, and that would be popped up on the agenda. In other instances, you might say, well, this work is like the old story about Wayne Gretzky trying to skate to where the puck will be rather than where it is. And that's anticipating a problem rather than waiting for it to occur. Am I anywhere close to how your thinking works?
Yes, it is. No, those are very good analogies to use. That is exactly what we're hoping to do with the internal audit function, is to go out there and identify where are those low-hanging fruit, where can we get quick wins and instant kind of results. And that's one of the reasons why we picked the policy and procedure support, because it's a big need. It spans all city departments and programs, and it's something that we can easily go in and start adding value right away. But also in some of those areas where, hey, we really need to dive in and look a little bit closer at opportunities for improvement in the month-end, year-end close, and the recruitment process, et cetera. Those are areas where we're going to spend time diving in deeper so that we can help the city put controls, put processes and policies in place before something goes wrong.
And to continue with my fruit metaphor, when you look at the priorities, you're not cherry picking. You are actually trying to draw a direct correlation between what people have identified and your team as experts in this field as areas where we can make gains and where we should make gains. But the work begins once the actual internal audit kicks off. That's a football metaphor. And then we'll be able to benefit from the findings as you develop them. Is that a fair assessment of how it works?
Yes, that is correct. And the city is already starting to see value from the enterprise risk assessment, utilizing the management tool to start utilizing some of those insights to start making improvements within the city as a whole. Now we use the results to then guide the internal audit process and identify those findings. At that point, when we have the findings, helping the city to prioritize and come up with implementation plans, and then holding that accountability going forward.
And so there will be interim results along the way. We'll be getting.
Absolutely. So we'll be presenting to the audit committee at each one of their meetings an internal audit status update, where we are on each of the projects. And as each report is fully vetted with management, has management responses, and is finalized, we'll be going to the audit committee, presenting the results, and then the reports would be finalized to be able to come to the governing board.
And I'm almost done. I want to circle back to where I started. In your professional assessment, as you said, you do this kind of work all over the country. The challenges you're seeing, the problems you're seeing, and the process we're following are pretty much the standard operating procedure for how this work gets done, recognizing that every city has its own particular, as you said in the slide, higher or lower priorities, more immediate needs, or things that aren't needed at all because they're already working very, very well. There's nothing in your work at this point that sets off fire alarms. That's another metaphor that we ought to be worried about.
No, yes, exactly. What you're saying is correct, that yes, the internal audit process that we are helping the city implement right now is best practices, is what how you want an internal audit function to be running. Doing that enterprise risk assessment, doing an enterprise internal controls review, getting the results, formulating an audit plan, having management in the background, utilizing the results to be able to start making improvements at that management level, and then having an ongoing accountability and reporting function with those charged with governance. Here's the findings, gets the updates, and starts to see the progress being made.
Great. Well, I want to add my commendation to you all for the work you're doing, the way you're going about it, and for coming in front of us tonight to bring that to our attention. This is how cities get better. Councilor Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to address something for members of the public based on the analogy that City Manager Blair used around getting a score at the end of the game. Mr. Blair does not think that any of this work is a game. He is an extremely hardworking individual. So I did just want to make sure that was clarified. It was an analogy to, talk about order of things, but I do think it's very important for the public to recognize that Mr. Blair in no way, shape, or form ever acts or implies that he believes that running this city is a game to him. So I wanted to make sure that point was made. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Councilor Garcia, you want one more bite at the apple, sir?
Yes, sir, please. My question for Moss Adams. So given that we've got these results and there are, as I mentioned earlier, 19 items that either fall within high, moderate to high, or moderate categories, what is the plan for the remaining 9 items that have been identified?
Again, the enterprise risk assessment is a management tool for management as well as those charged with governance to digest and utilize the information to make improvements across the board. The enterprise risk assessment is not utilized just to inform the internal audit plan. We are not going to be taking every single risk item that is on there and addressing it as an internal audit from an internal audit perspective. We prioritize those areas, identify the ones that are the most appropriate for internal audit, where we could add value, where we could help identify opportunities for cost savings or efficiency gains or risk management within the city. Those are the areas where we identify the resources for internal audit could be spent. And so with us looking at 9 areas, we're not just looking at 9 of the high risk areas. We're looking at 9 of the areas where internal audit could add the most value. For instance, with policies and procedures, that will span citywide. So it will cover every single area that has policies and procedures throughout the county. Same thing with recruitment and retention. That affects every single department and was something that was a common theme that came up. There are other information that is presented within our comprehensive risk assessment, which I know one of the council members had said that the city has not done this sort of comprehensive assessment in the past. A lot of great information came out of this, and this should be used as a management tool, as a tool to you all to identify and prioritize things that the city wants to work on. Sometimes things are identified as high risk, but it is not necessarily an area that internal audit specifically would focus on. Management might be in the process of implementing new systems, rolling out new hires, going through policy changes. Some things might be dependent on the legislature. And so those types of things are considered, and this should be used as a living document that management will be working with.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And so I'll have one request for city management, and that is if the governing body can get a status update on those 18 items that have been identified as either high, moderate to high, or moderate, and an update in regards to what action has been or will be taken to address those items. And lastly, I just want to refer back to the initial request of covering the enterprise risk assessment report. There's tremendous value from the governing body to have the opportunity to discuss that. It allows for the governing body to understand why the results came in the way that they did. But more importantly, it allows the public to understand what's going on with their government. I look at it from the perspective of when we get the reports of the external audits every year. We get an audit report given to us and it covers the findings that are in that report. And the governing body has the opportunity to work with the external audit team and city staff to get a better understanding of what the results mean. And again, that allows for the public to get that better understanding. So sometimes we got to look at this in the context of, sure, we're the ones doing the work hands-on, but the public is the one who are watching us. This is their government and they have a right to participate in the process just as much as we do. And that is a big reason why I had requested that the report findings be presented to the governing body and the governing body have the opportunity to discuss those findings. I'm happy to work on these one-on-one, but I think it's better for government and it's a better practice of good government for everybody to have the discussion and understand who might be working on what. So with that, no other questions. Thank you, Moss Adams. Thank you, Deputy City Manager, for the presentation. And I look forward to future updates.
Thank you, Counselor.
Just
Counselor Merrill.
Just really quickly, Mayor, I think some of the confusion may be coming tonight because this process is new to us. Again, this is the first time that we have done an enterprise risk assessment. It's the first time we've seen this report. We're learning how it's used. I think if the governing body and the public looks at the internal audit projects up against the internal risk assessment, they will see that many of the things that are in that risk assessment are being addressed with the 2-year plan. And I guess I'd ask, rather than take my word for it, am I correct in that assessment?
Yes, that is correct. The enterprise risk assessment was utilized to develop the internal audit plan, along with the information that we gained from both the enterprise risk assessment and the internal controls review. So a lot of those projects came out of either higher risk areas or areas that had the greatest opportunity for helping the city. If we saw trends like policies, like fraud, waste, and abuse, having that opportunity to add training to the city, to add value, those types of things, we included it in the audit plan.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing I want to focus on in this process is the internal audit committee is a group of community members with incredibly extensive experience, some of them in the private sector, some of them in the public sector, and other large institutions in this community. A lot of experience with organizational development and processes and procedures and financial systems. And they are the ones who reviewed this report very thoroughly and helped to bring, with your help, formulate this internal audit. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. That one thing that we have identified since coming in to work with the city is that the city's audit committee ordinance is somewhat vague. It says that audit reports go to the audit committee and they recommend them to the city manager and finance committee. It also says that they hear the internal audit plan. We are right now working with the audit committee and management to establish what this internal audit function looks like going forward. At the next audit committee meeting, we will be presenting a 1-page process document that is our recommendation based on city ordinance and best practices for how reports should be delivered to the varying governing bodies. In some cities, it only goes to the audit committee and then it becomes a public document. In other cities, it goes through the audit committee to the full council, and then it becomes a public document. We'll be recommending based off of what your ordinance says, as well as our knowledge of the city. Hey, here's what we think the process should be going forward. But prior to this process and Moss Adams collaboration with the city, it is not defined. It's very vague, saying these reports need to go to the audit committee, and then they're recommended to the finance committee.
Right, and I think you brought that up at the finance committee, and I think as we get experience with what we're doing here for the first time, we can improve our processes and probably our ordinance, and that's something that is, very much in the purview of the folks who are sitting on this dais to help fix that as you identify areas that we need to shore up in essence. But I guess and then that brings me to the other piece, which is, it's true that the external audit does come to us, and I believe the audit findings from this process are also going to come to us. And again, we're early in the process. I think the assistant city manager said this at the beginning. This is like, and the city manager said this, we're at the beginning of this process. As we get down the road further into the game, if that's the metaphor you want to use, or, the crop starts growing, if you want to go with the harvesting and the fruit analogies, we can, we'll have more information and more things to work with. So I look forward to that moment. And I want to thank you for your professionalism, for being here tonight, for helping us learn how this is done. I think, the best practices piece of this makes me very excited about the path we're on. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Lee Garcia, you want to wrap this up? The clock is ticking. We're in the fourth quarter.
I'll make it quick. Thank you, Mayor. And again, I think I'm going to refer back to one of your slides tonight, which is I think it's the fourth slide. And it shows the three-line model, which shows the governing body, shows management, and then it shows the internal audit. And I think, how do we connect that and how we work together to make the appropriate changes? It really is important that the community knows that we do know there are issues, and that's what this is showing. And I think that it is also important that we are all on the same page in how we address the problems, because there are problems, and these problems, whether they've been around for a long time or they've just, started, we do need to change gears and get them fixed. And then going back to some of the other comments that I see in regards to the metrics, and it is frustrating. Things tend to take a long time in government, and it's, how do we streamline that? And that's the other part of the puzzle that I think is very important to people, because identifying the problem, great. How do we fix it? And going back to, how do we put this into action? And the quicker the better, so we can get on track to being a well-run city. Just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. I'm going to declare an end to the presentation, because I think we've given it a really thorough going over. We've massaged it. We've given it thought. We've given it comment. We've picked the crop. We've planted the new crop. We've let this ripen. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to entertain a motion that we now move, before we go to executive session, to petitions from the floor. It's already 7:20, and I really think we owe it to our constituents to have the opportunity to be as close as 7 o'clock as possible for petitions.
So moved.
Second.
The motion to move petition to the floor up to this time. Is there any discussion? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Councilor Lindell, Councilor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Councilor Cassett,
Yes.
Councilor Castro, Councilor Chavez,
Yes.
motion passed.
Great. So at this time, if there's anybody in the council chamber, and I know, Madam Clerk, you'll keep your eye on the Zoom room. If you're here for a petition from the floor, we'll give you 2 minutes to speak to the governing body on any item that is not a public hearing. Well, I don't know that we have any public hearings tonight, so the podium is yours. for 2 minutes and the clerk will keep the clock.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilors. 2 minutes goes by very quickly, so I'll do this very quickly. In the last 2 days, I've contacted the UN ambassadors from
Just for
Russia.
the record, Mr. Fox, we need to,
I'm Stephen Fox,
There you go,
founder
sir.
of United Nations Santa Fe.
thank you, sir.
In the last 2 days, I've invited and explained what's going on with the city, particularly the Bearcats. You want those Bearcats. To the ambassadors from Russia, Japan, Brazil, Jordan, Egypt, Malta, Finland, Honduras, El Salvador, India, Mexico, Canada, Ecuador, Kiribati, Spain, Tuvalu, Indonesia, Malaysia, Mali, Mongolia. And I want to make a point about Mongolia. You know, the president of Mongolia is an ex-professional wrestler, and he let Vladimir Putin come to Mongolia completely oblivious to the International Criminal Court arrest warrant for Putin for genocide. It's like they fanned their nose at it. So I want to make a definite point of mentioning that. Also, I talked to and sent packets to Mauritania, Senegal, Morocco, Kuwait. Kuwait's really interested in Santa Fe. They've got a lot of extra money. Luxembourg, Netherlands, France, Tanzania, DRC, Palestine, Eritrea, Denmark, and Laos. We haven't had any help for this year with the city visitors guides going to these kinds of ambassadors. But when Cassie Salazar worked here, she took a great interest in that, and we got about 100 of them out. But this year, it's you know, the mayor, you and your staff thought it was like some personal venture of mine. I'm trying to look out for Santa Fe's long-range future. There is a declining tourism. There is a declining cognitive functioning in the people that do come to Santa Fe, and UN Center in Santa Fe could be the best thing for this city's future.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the chamber who wants to come avail themselves of this opportunity for petitions from the floor? Madam Clerk, in the Zoom room?
One person in the Zoom room with their hand up, Stephanie Beninato.
Good evening, Stephanie Beninato. I have made comments, I put in public comments, but I want to again point out that I sent you photographs of what the alley looks like behind my house. It is incredibly overgrown, and I really wish that the city would do something in maintaining their alley. I was also surprised at the City Ethics Commission meeting, in which it seemed as if the city attorney was actually running the City Ethics Commission, even though it says that they're supposed to be independent. And I didn't understand why it took almost 9 months for them to figure out that the person asking for an investigation hadn't actually stated a cause of action or hadn't stated enough facts to support a complaint, and then found that however long it took the investigator, that they couldn't figure out whether it was $500 in cost or not. Seemed like a real waste of time. I also think that is discouraging when they talk, any kind of comments about the obelisk keep getting pushed back. Even with the hearing tomorrow or however long it takes, there's not going to be an immediate decision. So I wonder if this, you know, what the city's really thinking about having all that public comment. And also from some experience I've had recently, I would say that the city needs to step up its ADA training. And I'm also wondering how a manager gets to decide how a few private companies get to advertise at a front desk that has very limited space. And I did also bring up the pallet homes to you and wonder why, when we still have, I think, 15 at least from the original purchase, and you're asking for a request for proposal, why you're buying 100 more without some commitment from some nonprofits to actually undertake that program. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor, there are no other attendees in the Zoom room.
Blair, you had a,
Mr. Mayor, yes, sir. I would I'm asking if the council and the governing body would be willing to consider moving item 9C up now before we go to executive session, so that my staff, who's been waiting patiently for 2.5 hours, can present and go home.
So moved.
Motion is second to amend the agenda so that we go to the item 9C that was pulled from consent.
We have discussion.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, I think we're under a bit of a deadline.
Sorry.
And so we have also other city staff as well as consultants.
I'm
that
sorry,
are
I didn't
waiting.
talk to the city attorney first.
Yeah, so
think that-
that's the only, and I'm so sorry.
I will withdraw my motion.
But on the other hand, I mean,
No, I
well,
get it.
this
I
is-
withdraw.
But wait, this is just, we're just pulling this because, two people need to recuse themselves, right? We're not getting into a big
I
debate.
think Councilor Michael Garcia has some questions about it.
Okay, Counselor Garcia has his hand up.
Yep, Counselor, you originally, I think we had a mistake in the comment on which item you were recusing yourself from. It's not C. That was the one that Counselor Castro was recusing herself from. Counselor Garcia, you wanted to recuse yourself from a different item.
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And I have just one question for staff on item 9C. So it's not extensive, just one question.
If we can take it up very quickly and, I'm amenable to that. I think the city attorney is too, if it's a rapid fire. We do have a time pressure on the city attorney's matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's already 7:30 and I don't know what's involved in the city attorney's.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, I'm a little concerned.
I
don't
love
know
my
how much-
staff, but I didn't realize the deadline before 8 PM. And so I would withdraw.
Okay.
Gonna buy some snacks for Director Nelson and we'll
All right.
survive.
We apologize to you for putting you through this, Director Nelson, but we do have a time crunch that the city attorney has identified. So let's dispense with the agenda change. Let's get a motion from Councilor Romero Worth to go into executive session because we can't do it without you.
No, you can't. Well, you could, somebody could do it. Okay.
Actually, before we do that, do you want to read for the record what we're about to do with regard to going into executive session, the recommendation?
Oh, yeah.
Mayor, I do recommend that we go into executive session for a few matters. Scrolling back down, that is pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1, attorney-client privilege, discussion of pending and threatened litigation, in particular, potential litigation regarding city water infrastructure construction and INRI City of Camden et al. Versus Tyco Fire Products. That's the second matter, and Unión Protectiva de Santa Fe versus Mayor Weber and the City of Santa Fe. Thank you.
And Councilor Mayor Worth, can you help us?
Yeah, I'm trying. I move that we go into executive session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act and, let's see, section 10-15 read this 1H subpart 7 for discussion of threatened or pending litigation in which the governing body is or may become a participant.
There's a second. Can you call the roll on going into executive session, Madam Clerk?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We will go into executive session. We'll return as quickly as we can and take up the item from consent when we do. We do have to vote on several items afterward, and then we'll come to you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I'm bringing us back into session from our executive session. Counselor Mayor I would entertain a motion from you.
Okay, pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1J, I move that the governing body reconvene in open session and state for the record that the matters discussed in the closed session were limited to those specified in the motion for closure.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll on that motion?
Certainly. Counselor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro? Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Very good. So,
Mayor, I have another motion.
yes, Counselor.
I would move that we accept the the Office of the City Attorney's recommendation on next steps with regard to potential water infrastructure construction litigation.
Second.
There's a motion and second that we adopt the recommendation of the City Attorney's Office. Excuse me, is there any discussion of that motion? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on that one, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion passed.
And Madam Clerk, if you could read the other executive session action item before we get a motion on it, so it's in the record.
Sure, it's, I'm sorry, Mayor, you want me to read 13A over?
No,
Or
13B.
13B? Okay. Direction regarding the City of Santa Fe's participation in the TICO certified class.
Mayor,
Yes, Counselor.
I guess I'd like the city attorney's wording on this motion, and maybe I can do so moved.
Sure thing, Mayor Weber, counselors, it is, the recommendation is to opt out of the class action settlement.
Okay, so I would move that we opt out of the class action settlement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to opt out of this settlement. Is there any discussion? Very good, Madam Clerk, in considering the motion on the floor, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Cassett?
Yes.
Counselor Castro?
Yes.
Counselor Chavez?
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Counselor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth?
Yes.
Mayor Weber?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Very good, thank you. Now, I believe, Madam Clerk, we go to the item, there will be actually two items removed from consent, but we'll start with 9C. If you could read that, and then I believe Counselor will be excusing herself from this item.
Okay, 9C is a request for approval of a budget amendment resolution to reappropriate the remaining Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget in the amount of $1,944,692 into the FY 25 budget. And we have the Office of Economic Development Director, Johanna Nelson, here to answer questions.
Let me entertain a motion. We'll ask,
Move to approve.
and so we have a motion on the floor. Counselor Garcia, you said you had one specific question you wanted to raise. Why don't we turn it to you, and then I think Director Nelson can use the opportunity, I hope, to not only to respond to your question, but to let the general public get a good idea about what this item is about. But I know you pulled this item off and you said you had one question you wanted to raise. So why don't you take the floor to ask your question?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Director Nelson, for being there this evening. The one question I have is, I had previously sent along a graph or a chart to you to see if we can get some data in regards to the allocations and expenditures for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund over the past couple of years. That way I can have a better understanding of how the money has flowed in and flowed out. And I didn't know if you had the opportunity to get that data.
Mayor, counselors, thank you for the question. I did receive the email. We've shared some correspondence. We are in the process of working with the finance team to compile that information for you. It's not ready as of this moment, but it is in process and are working with staff currently.
Okay, thank you. That's the only question I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. You have waited this long. I want you to give the public a brief but educated explanation about what we're doing here with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund dollars, so that everyone I think everyone will be able to understand that this is a way of getting these incredibly important dollars that affect our goal for more affordable housing out into the community.
Mayor, thank you for that comment and question. Counselors, this is a budget amendment request to move over funding from projects that were already approved in the previous fiscal year. The staff at Affordable Housing identified that typically the projects take longer than 12 months, especially as we're coming out of the pandemic due to cost and extra timelines. So the staff in the previous fiscal year extended some of those projects to have a performance period of 18 months. Projects that are being carried over in December of 2025. It's an additional timing that does not conclude at June 30th of this year. So the 1.9 requests are the extension of those contracts from those really important projects from fiscal year 24. I will clarify, Mayor and Councilors, if I may, too. This is in addition to the 3.8 approximate new projects that were approved in this current fiscal year.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I might, I just want to be clear, we're not extending the contracts. The contracts actually are already signed. The governing body's already approved them, and they expire the end of this fiscal year and next fiscal year, I think. And so what this does is just move the funding from the last fiscal year into this fiscal year so that they can actually fund the contracts that we've already agreed to.
Mayor and Councilors, you're correct. Thanks for the clarification.
And thank you for being so willing to stick around. I know you have other things to do, but your presence is greatly appreciated, and your work with affordable housing is appreciated. It's one of our highest priorities. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilors. Thank you, Councilor Garcia.
Somebody let our counselor who has recused herself.
That's a vote.
Oh, we got a vote. I apologize. I thought we were all done. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Certainly. Counselor Castro. Oh, I'm sorry. She's
Whatever
Counselor
whatever I have is catching, obvious.
Yes.
Okay, Counselor Lee Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia.
Yes.
Counselor Lindell. Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Now we can bring Counselor back in from recusing herself. And while we do that, Madam Clerk, can you take us to the next item? I believe it's item F that Counselor Michael Garcia had wished taken off of consent so he could recuse himself. Am I correct about that, Counselor?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, item F from consent.
Item 9F is a request for approval of intergovernmental agreement with the State of New Mexico Aging and Long-Term Services Department for providing volunteer services for the Division of Senior Services Volunteer Programs in the total amount of $313,120 through June 30th, 2025.
Move to approve.
Okay, there's a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor Garcia, you have your hand up so you can recuse yourself, sir.
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself from this item as I work for the federal agency that administers these senior volunteer programs.
Thank you for flagging that. We'll let you know when you can come back. So there's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there discussion? Madam Clerk, did you get the motion and the second? No. Who made the motion? Counselor Castro. Who made the second? Counselor
Second.
Cassett, in real time. So we have a motion, we have a second. Is there further discussion? There is no further discussion. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly, Mayor. Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Mayor Weber,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Can we somehow send a message to Counselor Michael Garcia that he can come back from the hallway?
I will promote him right now.
Thank you. And then if you'll take us to the next item on the agenda, Madam Clerk, if you could do that for us.
The next item on the agenda is matters from the city manager.
In real time. Mr. City Manager, you have the floor, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Councilors, good evening. My notes are in my office, so we're going to do a little impromptu activity here. First of all, it's been a few weeks. I just want to extend a huge congratulations to everyone on the city staff who contributed to the 100th burning of the Zobra. It is such a huge undertaking for the city staff, from police and fire, clearly, to parks and streets and ESD and everybody in between. It was a really successful night, and I couldn't be more proud of the folks who are part of it. At the same time, everyone who contributed to what was a very successful first 2 days of fiestas. Again, the same crews who are out there every day, making sure these events are a success. From my perspective, I continue to always say, there is no city event that's going on that isn't significantly possible because of the work of the City of Santa Fe employees. Outside of the financial contributions the city makes to many of these events, none of these major events in Santa Fe, Indian Market, Fiestas, Wine and Chili, you name it. The reliance on the city staff couldn't be more, and the team does it with grace and dignity, and I'm grateful for them. One thing I didn't want to raise about this weekend and the unfortunate events on Sunday is first to give a huge thanks to Crystal Lucero and the Fiesta Council for their partnership, their cooperation, how they handled what was a really difficult day. I think the partnership there has been extraordinary, and I'm grateful for that. Clearly, all of the police firefighters, our first responders who were involved in what happened and keeping the residents of Santa Fe safe, we continue to owe them a debt of gratitude. I hosted earlier today an initial after action review with Fire Chief Moya, Police Chief Joy, our Emergency Management Director, Brian Williams, some other staff, to begin looking at a number of things around both how these situations are handled, but also how do we communicate out with you as counselors, and how do we communicate out to the public in general. It is a complicated enterprise. And I would say, first of all, I'm grateful that as I was texting the members of the governing body, many of you didn't blink before saying, please let me know how I can help today. I know this is a tough day, and I'm grateful for that activism on your part and your service. I just want to flag for those who are watching at home about the place that we are in as the city government when it comes to these sorts of events. I know we had an unfortunate death with a senior citizen earlier this year. Councilor Michael Garcia had reached out to senior staff to begin a conversation around maybe some possible changes to the alert system, or sort of at least improving standard operating procedures, things like that. We're still working through that process. And I guess I just would flag for the folks who are watching at home that there's the place that we're in is that when something bad like this happens, rumors go really fast, and rumors go faster than what we can do in terms of having to verify what's actually happening. And so I think what we're sort of working towards is that a recognition from the staff perspective of the difficult place that you all are in as well as elected officials, because you know that you start getting messages from constituents and residents, and in this particular case, your own family members who happen to be downtown. I know some of you were downtown, some of you had family members downtown. You know, it was happening compared to most of the things that are happening in Santa Fe that I'm texting you about that are bad. This was because of the effect on fiestas and the cultural event and people being not, it was such a different sort of thing than what we've had in the past in terms of, for many of you, your proximity to what was happening, how fast it was moving, et cetera. I will tell you that I learned about it at 10:43 when two counselors reached out to me on two separate phones, one calling and one texting to say, what's going on? I immediately called the police chief, who texted me to say, I'm on the phone right now. I will call you back immediately. He was learning about what was happening around. It was that fast, right? And so in those subsequent minutes, part of what we're doing is I'm trying not to jam the police chief up while he is trying to be in communication with his officers who, fortunately in this particular case, had already apprehended the suspect, but are trying to make sure everyone's safe and identify crime scenes and do that sort of work. But also figure out how to communicate with you as quickly as possible. So there's sort of two or three competing interests that we have as a government and that I have with you and the public as we communicate. The first being, is it accurate information, right? And again, it can take a little bit longer to verify and to make sure that I'm telling you something. It's not uncommon when I text you at 10 o'clock at night that something's happened or 8 in the morning, that I have checked with Paul Joy to make sure that what I'm telling you is accurate. And then to the second point, that I don't inadvertently share information that could ultimately affect an investigation that might happen as a result of that, right? Those are the sort of the two initial tensions we have at that point. The third tension that I know that you all feel as you're hearing from your constituents is, how can we all be agents of bringing calm to what may be a chaotic situation, right? I was informed, this is secondhand information for me, but one person informed me that they were at the Presbyterian Church just down the street here from the City Hall. And that at some point during all of this chaos, someone ran in, grabbed the phone or the microphone from whoever was speaking and said, multiple people have been shot. There's an active shooter and everyone blockade the building or lock yourselves in. And as we now know, most of that wasn't true, right? And so I can't remember whose idea it was. I'm gonna give credit to Chief Joy, but I think we're gonna figure out some way that we can do either, probably not a presentation at a governing body meeting, but some sort of a training with the governing body, maybe even a tabletop exercise where we simulate something bad going on and sort of what everyone's doing and what's happening. I think just to sort of help clarify what, like, from our perspective, what should you be doing or not doing and what's helpful, I think for both Chief Joy and Chief Moya, there are, when there's a fire and Chief Moya is doing things and there's something criminal happening and Chief Joy is working, what are things that would be easier for them? What makes their jobs harder? That sort of stuff. And so we want to make sure that you all feel empowered too about what to say and what to do. And I know that that's hard, because you are getting the messages and the social media requests are coming at you saying what's happening, that sort of thing. I think we're going to work on, similar to what I was mentioning earlier, that we're working on with Councilor Garcia, some standard operating procedures around that for me and for you all about how to do this. One counselor today mentioned to me that they'd heard from a family member what was going on and went to look at their work phone thinking, I will hear from the city manager, and hadn't heard from me, which is when they texted me to say, are you awake? What's happening? Because this was the sort of thing, again, it was so fast that by the time the police department was ready to put out an alert to warn people, the suspect had been apprehended, the situation was secure. There was still a lot of frayed nerves from people, but in that instance, and part of what we're working on with Councilor Garcia and the senior staff are, the content of the alert messages that go out. Are they accurate? Do they help people understand what's going on? Do they bring calm? And so even as I was looking earlier today, the first alert that went out from Santa Fe Police, the key point for me was that officers were safe, everyone's okay. Which I think was good. In hindsight, I think I might have wanted them to say the situation, like that sort of thing, like what really gives that confidence to the public, right? So that's just a long way of saying it is a hard thing for us to do. I think part of what we're going to actually talk to senior staff about as well, because they are what I call grass tops, or people that the community looks to anyway about what's happening with the city, what's going on. I think for you all as well, is about anything in those instances. If someone comes to you with a claim of Armageddon, multiple people dead, that sort of stuff, first and foremost, always encourage people to be safe, take cover if they need to, right? But also let them know that, I haven't heard from the police chief, or I haven't heard from the city manager, I haven't heard facts yet. And so I hope that's not true. Make sure you stay safe, but let me find out for sure and we'll get back, but just to be in a place that we don't inadvertently make people more scared than they need to be, because it is traumatic. We live in a climate right now where the shooting last week that took the lives of 2 teachers and 2 students a few states away, it is traumatic for the public. I mean, even some of the photos we saw that Senator Cervantes took from the cathedral, there was real trauma for the people who could hear it and be around it. And I'm sure they're still dealing with it today. So anyway, that's a long way of just saying, we take this really seriously, and we want to keep working with you to continue to improve how we work on these things, how we make sure the public knows what's happening. I would be remiss, and by that I mean Regina Ruiz would punch me in the throat tomorrow if I don't do this. About only 5% of Santa Fe residents, I think, right now are signed up for the Santa Fe Alert System. You all should have received either an email from Brian Williams later this week, or received a text message like I did that somebody was checking my account. But they want to make sure that you all have the right alerts as well. But as you all are doing some of these public meetings that you've been holding, if you do e-newsletters on your own social media, anything that you can do to encourage your constituents to sign up for the Santa Fe Alert System would be great. We're looking at, can we be creative? Is there a way that we can, I think we actually offered free Zozover tickets for people that didn't get a lot of people to sign up, but maybe we figure out, is there a cool rebate we could do, or, lunch with one of the counselors. I don't know. We're gonna look at all the things that are out there, right? But I think we're also gonna try to figure out a way that we can make it easier for people to sign up, and see if we can't come up with a way that if we have a QR code or something that we can share with you that you can put on your flyers or share on that sort of stuff to make it be a sort of a 1 or 2 touch thing versus, something more complicated. Because, as I had the good fortune to travel with the mayor to go to some of these U.S. Conference of Mayors meetings, and when they talk about gun violence, it's not a question of whether it's going to happen in your town, it's just when. And so for me, as horrible as that is, what I'm hopeful your takeaway is that we take that very seriously. We're working to make sure that we're in a position to handle it if that happens, or rather when that happens. And we want to keep collaborating with you. Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, that's it for me. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I think the city attorney is next, but she may have already used up all of her allotted material. I don't know. Is there?
Mayor, councilors, I'll rest on the earlier matters. Thank you.
Pick all your fruit.
Basket full. Thank you.
What's next, Madam? You're next, Madam Clerk.
I'm next. Matters from the city clerk. I just want to welcome Daniel Brown and Desiree Dominguez to the constituent services team. If you guys are upstairs on the 2nd floor, please go drop by and say hi, introduce yourselves. But we're happy to have them. That's it for me. Let's move on to communications from the governing body.
Let's do such things. Let's reverse fields again. And Councilor Castro, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone. So Crystal Lucero actually had a birthday on Monday, and so I want to thank her for taking it in stride. It was a really difficult weekend, so happy birthday to her. And also I want to, actually, I didn't say this in the remembrances because I didn't want to take away from the horrible acts of 9/11, but James Earl Jones died, and he is our grandfather and father to many of us, so that was a difficult one. I am very much obsessed with The Lion King, and so rest in peace to James Earl Jones.
Well done. Councilor Chavez.
Thank you. I wanted to just acknowledge Councilor Lee Garcia and Councilor Faulkner for their town hall yesterday. And also just with the work in their community, I feel like all of us should really kind of stand beside them when they're communicating with their community members. Not once did any individual in their town hall speak disrespectfully, attack anybody. They approach their community members like community members, and I feel like they're accomplishing a lot in their district because of it. I was just grateful to be part of it and to be able to witness that and kind of learn from their approach. That community is ready to take action, and it's really because they've set the platform for them. They're empowering them. They want to listen to their voice. They're challenging them to bring solutions, and the community members are stepping up to do it. But they create a comfortable environment where they don't have all the answers. They're not on some political platform. They are literally just active community members that are working along other community members and trying to make a difference. So if you can attend one of their events, I think they're going to continue having town halls in their district, and they have invited District 4 because they're doing it as like a Southside series. I'm going to try to be a part of each one. But if you can witness just the way they operate with their community and what's happening in District 3 because of their leadership, I'd encourage you to be part of it. It was very empowering and motivating, and you could feel that they're right there in that, right on the verge of making a huge difference with that community, and that community truly driving policy through them with their voice, which is incredibly powerful. So I just wanted to acknowledge them, thank them for allowing me to be part of it, and just thank them for choosing to be leaders and not politicians in some of this work, because I feel like sometimes we lose sight in that. So I just appreciate it. And I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Counselor Garcia. Michael, you, sir, have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I as well want to give some thanks and gratitude to Krista Lucero, the entire Fiesta Council, all the city workers that were downtown on Sunday, whether it was PD all the way down to some of the workers that helped to keep the plaza clean. As the city manager said, the first 2 days of Fiestas was lots of fun, lots of memories were made by folks, but then Sunday came and some unfortunate memories were made. But the resilience of our community did shine through, and that included city workers. I was told by residents that city workers helped to usher residents to safety, and that just shows how powerful our workers are in regards to caring for our community. And so just want to give my thanks and gratitude to everybody that helped to make a horrible situation a little bit better, given the unfortunate circumstances that happened on Sunday. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Lindell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just make a couple of quick comments that we've really seen the best of us in the last 10 days or so. I had a lot of fun at Zozobra. The fire department over at Fort Marcy put on a wonderful time for us. They were wonderful hosts. The amount of work that city workers put into making that a terrific event, it's just an astounding thing. Add on to that you have the Ray Sandoval and his gang of merry men and women, all volunteers that put on a world-class event, volunteers. It's really astounding. And then Fiesta, we certainly saw what leadership is from Krista Lucero. That's true leadership, and we're grateful. So we saw the best of us in the last couple of weeks, and saw what our potential is, what we can do when we do things together and we put our differences aside. I was remiss earlier this evening to not mention that one of our city family members, Melissa McDonald, lost her mother last week. And I didn't know Melissa's mother, but what I do know is that she raised a terrific daughter. And we're grateful to her. And she's been called to her greater rewards. And I know that everyone on this governing body puts their arms around Melissa to help her through what is one of life's very, very big moments, losing your mom. So love and hugs to Melissa, and we're here for you to get through this. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Merwin?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think I have anything new. I also am thinking about Melissa and her family. Thank you, Councilor Lindell, for adding that. Also want to thank Crystal Lucero. Had to be a very hard decision. Fiesta started so wonderfully. A couple of us were at Mass at 6 a.m. Friday morning. The kickoff with the mayor's proclamation, or I guess welcome maybe, and proclamation at that Mass, and then later on the plaza, everybody kicking off again in a formal way. What was, again, very successful in its first 2 days, and just really sorry that it ended the way it did. But I agree with what's been said about resiliency and the community coming together and the things we can learn from what happened, and be better as we go forward. Also, just want to thank all those volunteers who made Zozobra special successful in its 100th year. That's a pretty incredible achievement. And it was a lot of fun. And just thank you to all the hard work that goes into that, because I know it's a command performance for all the city team and for the Kiwanis and for all the volunteers who make that happen. So just a big thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Cassidy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I do also, as everyone, want to recognize what happened with Fiestas and thank Crystal and the Fiesta Council. Because the court that, they put in so much the entire year, and it leads up to this. And of course, 2 of our members can actually really speak to that. And so to have it end that way, I know must be extremely disappointing for these individuals. So I just really want to recognize, what they do for our community, what they have done, and this year, and the joy that Fiestas brings. It really did start off very beautifully this year. I loved the message that I heard from the Fiesta Council and from the Fiesta Court. I really saw a lot of people downtown. I think it seemed to have a bigger crowd than I've seen in the last couple of years as we continue to recover from COVID, and really just a very diverse group from our community, and how we all come and celebrate different things and recognize different cultures together. So looking forward again to next year. And I really do want to recognize everybody that put so much into making this happen. And we really do thank you, and very sorry that it did end this way. Zozobra, as everyone mentioned, was incredible. Thank you, our city staff that do such incredible work. The fire department, they actually do a lot more than we figure you're burning a giant puppet, obviously, you need the fire department to make sure that everything is safe. But I was actually really watching them this year during setup and speaking to Chief and some of our firefighters about everything that goes into it. As they're coordinating, parking and, getting in and out, and then they're up on the hill to make sure, we don't set other things on fire that we're not meaning to. So they really put a lot of effort in, and I did want to recognize them. And also the balloon made its debut, and that was really exciting, and everybody that was there was very excited about it. So it's really cool. I'm excited to see it actually fly. Hopefully at Balloon Fiesta, it'll be able to go up. So if you haven't seen that, please go check it out. I want to mention the Livability series. We have another one coming up. This is going to be on Thursday, September 19th. Thank you. And we are going to be having Julie Campoli come to talk about density. So really, what does density look like? How can we be doing, density in a way that is desirable? A big conversation that we have in the city. So definitely encourage anybody who has not been to go. And then last but not least, I wanted to wish a happy birthday to my mother. She had her birthday last week. I was happy that I was able to celebrate her. Very glad that she is now home to be celebrated with. So happy birthday, Mom. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Mom. Counselor Lee Garcia.
Mayor, yeah, ditto. You guys all covered just about everything. I want to take another 10 or 15 minutes. I could probably do it for 20 or 30 minutes, but I did want to share a little bit about my day on Sunday, which I was at the cathedral when all of the chaos happened, and it's a very real thing. And when you go through something like that, you have to process, what am I going to do? How am I going to help? And there's a lot of vulnerable people at that moment in time. And so yeah, kudos to Crystal. I happy birthday, girl. Because it was a tough time. I was there with her during that process. Thank you to the city manager. Thank you to Chief Joy. Because we were in direct collaboration with, we didn't know what was going on. And just, what, also take a look at those chain of events. And when we are having these really large events, whoever is in contact, maybe we can have a liaison that directly communicates with them directly. And I know that information is flying, and you don't know, we know, but it is, to go through that experience, it's pretty moving. So again, I just wanted to thank PD and all public safety, fire department, even parks and environmental services. They were all right there, helping to direct people into buildings and things of that nature, because they didn't identify that something was happening. And thank God we didn't have a bigger catastrophe. I did want to thank the community that came out last night to attend our town hall. Thank you for the kind words, Councilor Chavez. And I think that truly is a good sense of feeling how you do get involved and have that intimate conversation with each of your constituents. And as I've always told them and everyone else, is that I do represent the city. Obviously, we represent District 3, but we are a city representative. And so how can we collaborate with them to make their livelihoods better? And I think that's the most important thing that comes out of those type of town hall meetings. As well, I would lastly just like to say happy birthday to my little cousin. His name is Sammy Dominguez. He is in Arizona, but he was born on 9/11, and it is a day that I always remember his birthday because of that. But happy birthday, bro. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. I want to just comment on the times we live in. It's been an emotional roller coaster ride, and I think that's indicative of the world we live in right now. We had great highs of tremendous success and fun, and then we're challenged with something that puts us to the test. We have to do both. We have to do all of the above, and we have to do it, I believe, with an attitude of gratitude. The experience of the last couple of weeks should continue to remind all of us that we are blessed to live in a quite remarkable place with special people, special events, volunteers who make remarkable things happen every day, city staff who make remarkable things happen every day. And when they collaborate with each other, it becomes an unstoppable community. The Zozobra program was off the charts. I will never understand how those drones work, but I am in awe of them because they not only worked, they danced. I think Fiesta was this year off to an amazing start. I want to extend my gratitude not only to Crystal Lucero and the Fiesta Court, but also to Gary Delgado and the Caballeros, the Father Canon, who preached a beautiful message at the Pregón Mass. I think we all came out of that feeling good about ourselves, and then we were treated to chocolate and biscochitos and a dance from native dancers, and it felt like there was nothing in the world that was more blessed than the place we were standing. And then to have things go sideways on Sunday was both really sad and also uplifting to see how our community responded. Everybody, including the vendors, who understood that they had their day canceled, and not one of them started complaining. They packed up. They were part of a team to keep everybody safe. Crystal put community safety ahead of anything, and has been said, they work year round to make this event happen. They're volunteers. They didn't step up to be volunteers in order to deal with a person stealing a car and threatening the lives of other people. They volunteered to put on a fiesta. And yet, when challenged, they not only rose to the occasion, but as Crystal said in a TV interview, whatever happened this year will only provide more strength and more unity for what we do next year. And that sense of purpose and character and resolve, I think, permeated the day and demonstrated that even things that spoil a good day can turn into something where you are grateful for the strength and the unity and the purpose of our community. The only person who was injured on Sunday was the guy who stole the car. Everybody else went home safe. That's a blessing. That's a blessing. And he's currently incarcerated, and he'll be made answerable for what he did. And the rest of us will celebrate each other for what we did and how we managed ourselves and our community and demonstrated calm in the face of an act of just pure community destruction. There's a lot going on in Santa Fe. The city is looking very full, and it's going to continue this weekend. If you're available on Saturday, the El Grito ceremony will be on the plaza at around 5:15. The 40 under 40, courtesy of the Hispanic Chamber, a great recognition of people who are half my age. We'll go on with 40 of our community leaders who deserve to be recognized as we see young people step up and make a difference in Santa Fe. Foundations for the Future on Sunday, Technology and Independence at the El Dorado. And then before we know it, Wine and Chili will be happening. And once again, we'll have a celebration of the food, the culture, the smells, the joy of living in Santa Fe. And the season is changing around us, and I'm looking forward to a beautiful fall. I'm also grateful for everybody on the governing body who rise to these challenges together and work collaboratively so that we can all provide calm and a sense of purpose and a sense of unity when the community is asking for information, what's going on. The answer is we will do our very best to make sure everyone gets the information they need to stay safe. And community safety, community security is our highest priority every day. So thank you for everyone's participation. Gratitude for everybody who made such a big difference. Madam Clerk, what is our next order of business?
Next order of business is introduction of legislation. 16A is consideration of a resolution sponsored by Councilor Amanda Chavez. It's a resolution accepting a grant from the Local Government Road Fund Program administered by New Mexico Department of Transportation and entering into cooperative agreement control number L500577.
Counselor?
Yes, so this is to make improvements to the Santa Fe Rail Trail intersections at Paseo del Peralta, Second Street, West San Mateo Road, and Rodeo Road within the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe County, and to include reconstruction and traffic signal improvements at these intersections. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, what's next?
16B is consideration of Bill 2024-10 and adoption of an ordinance sponsored by Mayor Alan Weber. It's a bill relating to the City of Santa Fe's Office of Economic Development Plan Ordinance, Section 11-11-5 SFCC 1987, repealing and replacing Ordinance 2023-15, including approving a local economic development project participation agreement between the city and Parting Stone, Inc. for design, development, and construction of tenant improvements, lease payments, and expansion of a corporate headquarters, a local economic development project.
Thank you. I think the caption speaks for itself, Madam Clerk. We have already had petitions from the floor, so I believe we're going to public comment on bills.
Correct. 18A is consideration of Bill 2024-4 and adoption of an ordinance sponsored by Councilors Sidney Lindell and Mayor Alan Weber. It's a bill relating to Marty Sanchez Links de Santa Fe, amending sections 23-7.3 and 23-7.4 of SFCC 1987 to update golf rates.
Madam Clerk, I don't think anyone in the room is here to comment from the public, but there may be somebody on the Zoom room who would like to comment for 2 minutes.
Stephanie Benenato.
Thank you. I understood from some presentation prior that this was being given, a contract was being given to a certain company that was known for having managing golf courses around the country, maybe around the world, and that they were highly regarded, but also expensive. And so I'm wondering if there are provisions for local or resident Santa Feans to be able, at a lower rate, to be able to use the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Madam Clerk?
There are no other attendees, Mayor.
Very good. Let's move to the next item on the agenda.
The next item is 19A. This is final action on legislation. This is a public hearing. It's consideration of Bill 2024-11 and adoption of an ordinance sponsored by Councilor Carol Romero Worth. It's a bill relating to House Bill 139 adopted during the 2023 regular session, amending section 1-3.2 SFCC 1987 to remove text about the corrections fee, judicial education fee, court automation fee, and substance abuse fee, consistent with the repeal of section 31-12-8 and 34-14-11 NMSA 1978, and amending section 12-6-12.2 of the Uniform Traffic Ordinance to remove text about the DWI prevention fee and the crime laboratory fee, consistent with the repeal of section 31-12-7 NMSA 1978.
This is a public hearing. I think we can entertain a motion and then we'll see if there's any public testimony.
To approve.
Madam Clerk, is there anyone on the Zoom room who wants to testify on this public hearing for 2 minutes?
Nobody in the attendee room has their hand up, Mayor.
And I don't see anyone in the council chambers. Is there discussion among the members of the governing body? Seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on the motion, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Councilor Chavez?
Yes.
Councilor Lee Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Michael Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Lindell? Counselor Romero Worth.
Yes.
Counselor Cassett.
Yes.
Counselor Castro.
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. What's next?
Next is 19B. It's consideration of bill number 2024-9 and adoption of ordinance sponsored by Counselor Carol Romero Worth. It's a bill amending SFCC 1987, Section 11-8 to allow the city of Santa Fe to obtain an investment advisory service contractually for the investment of public funds.
I think we'll do it the same way. We'll take a motion and then entertain testimony.
Move to approve. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any hands up in the Zoom room, Madam Clerk?
No, Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Discussion from the governing body. Madam Clerk, there are no hands raised there either. So with that, would you please call the roll on the motion?
Certainly, Mayor. Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro, Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. I believe our next item is appointments, Madam Clerk.
Yes, it is, Mayor. 21A is appointments to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. Sierra Cruz, appointment, term ending June 2026. Kathy Rivera, appointment, term ending June 2026.
Move to approve.
Second.
Does anyone want to speak to these appointments? I think it's appropriate.
I'm happy to speak to these appointments. Very excited to have both these individuals come on. These are two individuals that have shown a lot of dedication to our community in a variety of ways. Both very thoughtful and very interested in seeing how they can really just give back to our city. So very much looking forward to have both of them coming on. Stay tuned. We will probably have one more appointment for EDAC at our next meeting. So I look forward to bringing them on then. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion? Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on the motion, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. And the next item, Madam Clerk?
Next item is Public Safety Committee appointments. Cameron Crawford, appointment, term ending March 2028. Aurora Martinez, appointment, term ending March 2028. And Christine Robertson, appointment, term ending March 2028.
Move to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and there's a second. Is there any comment on these appointments?
Yeah, I want to say that we have, which makes sense, a lot of interest in public safety. A lot of individuals have been coming forward and reaching out with great interest, and all of them have been great candidates to be part of the committee. As you can see, the three individuals here, if you review their resume, they will have great, they'll be great additions, a lot to offer. They either have some type of public safety background or they're very involved in our community and have kind of seen some of the issues we're facing from the other side, as just involved and active community members. So I think that they're going to be great addition to public safety. And so I'm excited to have them for our first meeting next Tuesday. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. Any other comments about these appointments? Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Counselor Lindell, Counselor Romero Worth,
Yes.
Counselor Cassett,
Yes.
Counselor Castro, Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Aye.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Weber.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, I believe that completes the agenda for tonight. Thank you, everyone.